Call the meeting of Planning and Zoning to order. Start with roll call. Steve Luchek.
Present.
Michael Kane.
Here.
And we don't have Clint, right?
No, Clint is not going to. Clint is not going to be here, and Kevin also said he was not going to attend.
Okay. And here we are. Okay, so our first item is public hearing.
You want to appoint the secretary?
Oh, yes. Michael, you
Sure.
take care of the
Yeah,
secretary.
be glad.
You have the announcements?
He does.
Here you go. Oh,
Wanted to-
that's for the first one, REG A25. I have a copy.
Yeah, I just had.
So it's this one. This is the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Notice is hereby given that the following public hearings will be held Tuesday, July 8, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Community Room 2, Town Hall Annex, 134 Groton Point, Long Point Road, and virtually via the Zoom platform to hear the following: Zoning Regulation Amendment REGA 25-0003. Text amendment to add new section 8.2-6.1, off-site parking in the IM zone to allow for required parking on sites other than the sites which they serve with conditions. Exit 88 Offices LLC applicant. A Zoom link, meeting link will be posted on the town website. Meetings calendar. Applications are on file and available for public inspection during the normal business hours at the Planning Department, 134 Groton Long Point Road, Groton, Connecticut, 06340, and at the office of the Groton Town Clerk, 45 Fort Hill Road, Groton, Connecticut. And the proposed draft zoning regulations can be viewed at the Groton website. You need to read all of that? No. All persons having interest in the applications are invited to attend, comment, and provide testimony and evidence dated this 27th day of June 2025, Groton, Connecticut. Susan Sutherland, chairperson.
Do we have a presentation of this? And here you are. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
We lost our favorite rock.
Look at rock.
We got.
That's the rocks, everything falls apart.
So mark in the lower left.
Perfect.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. For the record, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a land use attorney and a partner at the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London, Connecticut. And I want to thank you for having me here tonight. I'm appearing before you on behalf of Exit 88 Offices LLC, which has submitted an application for a zoning text amendment to restore the provisions for off-site parking within your mixed-use industrial district. Over the last few months, we've been working with your staff on what we believe is a very minor amendment to add language back into the zoning regulations that was removed in the comprehensive update several years ago. We're using previously approved language and have adopted the suggestions and recommendations of your staff, and we now present the final version of this zoning text amendment to you this evening for consideration. As this involves a change to your zoning regulations, you sit in your legislative capacity in reviewing the application, and you're charged by state statute to consider the consistency with your plan of conservation and development and your comprehensive plan for zoning. Further, you have the choice of approving the amendment as proposed, denying it, or making changes to it and approving the proposal with those modifications. My client owns the currently vacant development pad located directly north of and adjacent to the Mystic Marriott Hotel and Spa. Way back in 1999, the Zoning Commission approved a special permit for that large-scale hotel and conference center development, which also included a small office pad to the north along Pohaganat Drive with shared parking for the overall development. The hotel was obviously the main driver of that development, and that was built. But the office pad has remained vacant and undeveloped with very little interest for over a quarter of a century now. Complicating the issue is that during large-scale events, the hotel currently uses most of the parking that was built as part of that approval, which drastically limits interest in the development pad as currently configured. While it was not part of the original 1999 approval, my client, through its affiliates, also owned 2 small parcels of land across Pohaganat Drive, encompassing approximately 2 additional acres of land. And those were always intended by my client to provide additional parking to serve the second development pad, whatever it eventually entailed. Now, while offsite or satellite parking was permitted in that industrial zone back in 1999, and quite frankly, for many years later, the provision for such parking arrangements was removed during the comprehensive rezoning in 2019. Today, those parcels across the street, which are located in the same IM zone, cannot be used to meet the parking requirements for the empty development pad. Under the current regulations, parking can only be provided on the same parcel as the use, and that's a real problem for my client. Our intent with this text amendment is literally to restore the language that was once part of your zoning regulations to allow for off-site parking once again in this particular district. We believe this additional level of flexibility within the IM zone will hopefully allow my client to finally successfully market and develop the remaining pad site. While my client clearly has a specific reason for asking for this change, we also believe that other parcels in the IM zone can benefit from the ability to utilize off-site parking to support future industrial or mixed-use development. Just to go quickly through the text amendment with you, and as it was read in the public notice, this is a new language added as section 8.2-61 entitled Off-Site Parking in the IM Zone. And it reads, required parking for uses within the IM zone may be provided on sites other than the sites which they serve, provided that, and there's 3 requirements or conditions. First, location. Said spaces are within 500 feet walking distance of the lot or use which they serve and are within the IM zone. So to have off-site parking, it must be relatively close, within 500 feet of the use. The lot or the use, and it has to be within the IM zone. You can't have parking in a different zone. Second is ownership, and this is taken right from the previous regulations. Such spaces shall preferably be in the same ownership as the use which they serve. However, evidence of a lease of such spaces for a minimum term of 1 year with automatic annual renewals shall be acceptable. Such lease shall be submitted to the town prior to the filing of the site plan in the land records, and copies of annual renewals shall be provided the Office of Planning and Development Services. Further, the obligation to maintain the required number of spaces as set forth in section 8.2-4 is not diminished by the leasing option permitted under this section. And then finally, there's a requirement for pedestrian access. In the IM zone, pedestrian access connections between off-site parking areas and the site of the principal use shall be provided for, or shuttle service between sites shall be encouraged if necessary. It's a fairly straightforward, simple amendment. And as I said, we're really restoring language that was once in the regulations for this industrial zone. We believe there's a solid legal basis for supporting the amendment to the zoning regulations tonight. While the 2016 POCD does not directly address the issue of off-street parking in the IM zone, nor would you ever expect to have that level of specificity in a plan of conservation and development, we believe that providing additional flexibility to development opportunities in the IM zone is wholly consistent with several major goals and objectives of the plan. I think those are discussed in fairly good detail in your staff report from Mr. Kelly. The POCD directs the commission to identify and analyze vacant industrial land, especially where infrastructure is in place, and revise zoning regulations as appropriate to encourage new development. Prior market analysis commissioned by the town of Groton have also stressed the need to accommodate readily available industrial properties for new development and remove unnecessary barriers and layers of complexity in the zoning process. Further, as parking is a critical component of almost any successful development, the POCD directs the commission to review parking requirements and appropriate standards for different types of uses in different areas of the town on a continual basis. It's important to also acknowledge that allowing off-site parking is not something new within your current zoning framework, as you already allow for such a provision in the MDD zone under your current regulations. From our perspective, this proposed text amendment is very minor. It's a change made simply to restore something that was once removed, perhaps removed by accident during the comprehensive update. If we want to encourage a development and reinvestment in the IM zone, we think that this very simple tweak to the zoning regulations can allow projects like my clients to move forward with really little to no adverse impact. Such off-site parking provisions may not be appropriate in some zones, but particularly in mixed use and industrial areas, I think this kind of flexibility can be helpful in making projects viable. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and attention to our application this evening. We reserve our right of rebuttal. Thank you.
You're up, staff.
All right. Just like the last text amendment to the IM, this follows a lot of the same theme in terms of not requiring notification or referral of the Council of Governments or abutting or adjacent municipalities. There were the appropriate notifications made to the Department of Health, Groton Utilities, Public Registry, and our own courtesy referral list. To date, no comments have been received regarding this application. As has been stated previously, off-site parking in what is now the IM was an option in the previous regulations, though it was limited to additional parking above and beyond what was required on site. It's important to note that WRPD regulations requirements still apply to any potential off-site parking in the IM. There are no specific applications pending that would utilize off-site parking as of right now. And just as a reminder, if the commission would like to discuss this proposed amendment further, the public hearing may stay open until the August meeting, the 12th, and still comply with the requirement of closing that public hearing after 35 days.
All right. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this subject?
Jeff Pritchard, Westminster Avenue, Mystic. I have a concern with the text of this proposal and that how it could be enforced of the shared parking after any land sales, or somebody had a lease and then decided he wanted to start charging more than the person wanted to pay for it. How that would be handled, if you can even handle it through land records. Also, the text itself has some errors in it, not very clear on what the distance is between parking spaces and the lot and the user. And I think you could get in trouble with that, but that's just a matter of using the right text. But if you're leasing land, I think it could be a real problem. I don't know how you control that from a land use standpoint. And it's a long-term item. You know, the business might be there for 20, 50 years. And everything could change around it. I think it's difficult to handle.
Thank you. Do we have anybody online? Nope. Steve?
I guess there is a question of 500 feet being the entrance, the furthest spot. You know, it's got to be within a bubble of 500 feet.
Yeah, any spaces, as it's written, any spaces that would be counted for your zoning requirements would have to be within 500 feet of the use or the lot on which that use is
So
located.
draw a 500-foot bubble.
Yeah, and you'd have to
And-
show that all those spaces meet it. If there were areas of a lot that were beyond 500 feet, then they wouldn't be eligible under this provision.
Okay, and then I also assume that it could be a combination of both, right? That we're changing, you could have parking both leased and, owned.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously in my client's perspective, they intend to own the land that on which they would be using, but the previous regulations allowed lease arrangements, and in most communities that I work in that allow off-site parking, the lease provision is something that's provided for. It allows for flexibility. It allows for adjacent or nearby property owners to contract to provide parking where they have it. Mr. Pritchard's concerns are well taken. One of the things that this regulation requires is that the annual renewal has to be provided to the Office of Development and Planning, and the obligation to maintain the required spaces is not diminished by the leasing option. So for instance, if for some reason that renewal didn't happen, if that person didn't pay for instance, the fee for it or allowed the leasing to lapse, they would be in violation of their site plan or special permit approval. And that would make them available for the town for an enforcement action, just as if I build a parking on my own property to meet the needs, and I come around one day and I bulldoze that parking away. I'm not allowed just to do that. That would bring me in conflict with my approvals, and what would subject me as an enforcement action from the town because I'm not consistent with my approval. So this provision, again, this is language that the town had between 1999 when the Marriott was first built and up until 2019. It's the same language was there before. This language gives the town that enforcement mechanism, even in the instance of a lease situation. Certainly, it's not how my client intends to use it, the concept, but I think it's valuable in that it allows for a variety of different property owners to take advantage of it.
And then the shuttle service is just for convenience.
Yeah,
bad weather, I mean, it's still 500 feet.
Yeah, exactly. It's still 500 feet. There may be situations, again, in my situation or my client's situation, we have fairly level properties that are immediately adjacent a roadway. So you can build easy pedestrian connections with crosswalks. But you may have a situation where you may have some topography. There are some steep parts of the IM zone where it may, if during rain or inclement weather, it may make sense to have a shuttle running between the areas. And I think that's the language that I've provided here shall be encouraged if necessary. So the commission on a case-by-case basis, if somebody comes before you and says, hey, I want to have some off-site parking for my IM development, there's a lot up on the adjacent property that I have an agreement to build and to lease. If you have a concern that, geez, what are you going to do when it rains? What are you going to do if there's snow? Then you can turn to this section and say, listen, are you providing shuttle service? Is that sufficient for it? In some situations, I think shuttle service is unnecessary, and I think most of them there will be. But we added that just in the case that there might be an issue.
And a question to staff, do you recall anything about why we deleted it? Nothing in the records?
No, I don't remember any reason for deleting it.
That's all I got.
Michael.
It looks, I can't like lay one on top of the other, but is the 2019 regulation verbatim for what we are proposing now, or?
Very close, particularly the ownership section is lifted. I think I may have changed a couple words on pedestrian access, and there may be an additional section that was in the 2019. I think Bryce was nice enough to include the 2019 in your committee.
Yeah, no, I see it here. I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
And that's
The
why I was
language
asking, because I'm like flipping page to page back.
Yeah,
and
it's
forth.
literally pulled, the language that you see there, there may have been a second section about that I just didn't include because the original language dealt with other zones, including the MDD. This is a specific provision just for the IM.
All right, so could an applicant build and have no parking on site?
Yes.
Just remote, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I kind of gathered
And that
from this.
and that could occur in situations where you have very small lots, or you have a situation, quite frankly, I don't think we would have no parking, but in my client's particular situation, the pad is part of a larger development at the Mystic Marriott. And the reality is the Mystic Marriott occupies a lot of those spaces. even the spaces that are around the development pad. So if we had a use in that area, we would certainly have spaces on that site, but a good majority of the spaces to serve our use would likely be across the street.
Yeah, okay. I don't have any, my concern is the lease part, which makes me, like, I think, okay, I mean, and I understand you to be in violation of the, but that like becomes a problem for us, that's like, and if I owned that property where I was leasing that to this person and I knew that I could squeeze a little harder or a lot harder and charge anything I wanted, because, so I just like feel like these could be easily lost just after 1 year. And I would like to either see longer leases or
I have
some
no,
other
I have no
provision.
objection. If you want to increase the length of the lease.
Yeah, or just ownership of it would be the other thing that I think would probably be the,
Mr. Kane, again, for my client,
that's why I'm.
yeah, so I
I'm
think
just
if
like-
you wanted to have, again, this language is taken from the 2019
Yeah.
text that the town had. If you wanted to say a minimum term of 5 years, a minimum term of 10 years with automatic renewals, I don't have any problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to keep the lease in, because I think the regulation should be helped, not all of the land in the IM is owned by a single entity.
Yeah, just seems like, to me, that would be my only objection, would be 1 year is too short or not at all, because this could easily be lost, and then, yes, we could enforce it, but we don't want to.
And as I said before, you have the ability to approve, deny, or modify the regulation. So, and either of the modifications that you've discussed, Mr. Kane, I can work with you on those.
And for me, I think you actually answered it preemptively, is that for the purposes of what you're going for here, just simply requiring ownership wouldn't be a problem for your client at this time. It's not what you're going for, but it would be all right, because I see a terrible problem with that, is that, okay, we could enforce it. We say, okay, somebody builds something, now it's required, and now they don't have it anymore for whatever reason. What's our enforcement? To close down the building? We can't really enforce it.
Yeah.
It's tough enough to get someone to change a light bulb once they plugged it in. To get someone to close down their business because of something like that, I don't think we want to put ourselves into that. But what I'm hearing is, as much as you think it's a good idea, it doesn't harm your situation.
It doesn't harm my situation, but this is an issue that I think people have wrestled with. You're not the first community to have
Yeah.
off-site parking. For example, City of New London allows it in all of their zones. There are certain zones in the town of Stonington allows off-site parking, and they're all based on agreements recorded on the land records. None of those are perpetual agreements, but they all say that if the lease lapses, you're in violation of your zoning approval.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, half of downtown Mystic has, long-term agreements with,
Well,
art gallery.
we'll discuss it afterwards, right? We'll just get the questioning, but the difference between those is that downtown New London, and frankly, even Mystic, there are places to park. In this zone, the only places to park are the places we build.
Mhm.
So there aren't any until they're built. And so by excluding some place, then we're going to be in a position of not having any place until you build some more. There's no other lot to go to. There's no competition. There's just nowhere to go.
Yeah,
For the time being.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think in most urbanized towns, though, I think Commissioner Hudson, properly said, these types of arrangements are sort of commonplace. But I understand your point. If you choose not to allow leasing, then I would at least say ownership or a perpetual easement, a permanent easement for parking.
Okay.
So that would give at least a little bit more flexibility to somebody. Just a thought.
Oh, Colin, your legal ability here is that a perpetual lease. or
No, perpetual easement.
A
I'm sorry.
perpetual easement.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's something we often have for like utilities and things, right? So.
The thought being is if someone had a very large piece of property, but they had a section of it they weren't
Right.
using, and it would be perfect for a small satellite parking lot for an adjacent user, they could negotiate a sale of that easement for that area, but keep the ownership of their overall parcel. I just don't, I hate to dull a tool so much that it becomes a single use tool.
Yeah.
It'd be great if somebody else could take advantage of this too.
All right. And I don't have a problem. I mean, I look at 500 feet actually, and that's a football field and a half. And that's a long way, but that would be to the farthest one you're going to count.
Yeah, and that's also, if you read a lot of the studies about, you know, in urban areas, how far is somebody really willing to walk to something? 500 feet is sort of a critical number that comes up over and over again.
I'm fine in an urban area. That's not what this is. So it's specific to this. This is
True.
walking down the sidewalk to someplace else. And so.
Yeah, but 500 feet is a critical length of distance that people are willing to walk for somewhere they want to go or need to go.
Okay.
Beyond that, it gets a little bit dicey.
And I'm fine with it as long as it's perhaps, well, we didn't really specify, as was mentioned, is that it's not for the lot line to the farthest space or from the facility that it's serving to the farthest space. What actually did it say? It just said 500 feet, right? 500
It says
walking distance.
It's 500
Distance
feet
of the
walk,
lot.
its spaces are within 500 feet of walking distance of the lot or the use that they serve. Again, you may have a building on a lot that's in a different location, so
Right.
this language gives a little bit of flexibility on that.
All right. That gives me a little heartburn, but not enough to still want to rock the boat on that, I suppose. Because the building's on this side and you're doing 500 feet, we could end up with 800 feet. But, all right. All right, are there any other questions? Anybody from the public? Anybody up there? No?
Just to be absolutely clear though, the old regulations allowed off-site parking in excess to the parking that was already on site, whereas this would be fulfilling required parking off-site. To your point, Michael.
All the parking could
Yes.
be off.
Yes, yes. So when you were asking the difference between the old regs and this regs,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, so that is the
Probably.
difference.
the
So
difference.
that,
That you could have no parking on site
okay,
of the
Mhm.
facility, of whatever.
I just want to make that clear,
used
not
it,
that,
And all of the parking 500 feet away.
You wouldn't be able to do that because you have to have accessible
Mhm.
spaces.
Yeah.
So building
Well,
code would kick in, but
yeah.
theoretically,
Mhm.
yes, you could have a situation where you had a postage stamp lot with a building on it and all the parking's across the street within 500 feet of that.
and even logistically, like, are you going to put EV spaces on the off-site parking versus trying to include those on-site? But just for the sake of that conversation you were having.
also say be required to. If they couldn't, then they just couldn't do that plan. So that's,
You would have to, under your regulations, you'd have to provide the EV parking.
that's right.
Mm.
So if they couldn't
Anyways.
do it at the remote site, then they have to put it someplace else.
You'd have to
And
figure
then-
out a way
yeah.
to do it,
Yeah.
Right, so
bottom line.
it might work backwards to
Mm.
not permitting a particular structure because of its size on the posted side.
Yeah.
Works back the other way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a little bit of I mean, it seems like some of the parking should be on site.
And as you said, it will, right? Effectively, accessible spots need
Yeah.
to be
At least
on site.
accessible
They,
spots would.
yeah,
Beyond that, I'm wondering.
Okay. We have that as a discussion after, because I don't have, in an urban
Yeah.
situation, I don't think we care.
Okay,
That's one of those places where urban versus suburban, and if it's elsewhere, then you just have to
Yeah.
walk down the street.
I think that's a good point, is that we are in the IM district. And particularly for my client's situation, that the reason we're doing this is because we need that additional parking to make the pad viable. Because I wasn't part of the shared parking approval back in 1999, but I can tell you the hotel conference center on a busy day when it's having a conference, it's using most of the parking on that site.
Existing parking, not.
Yeah.
Existing parking.
And there's no other room on the site to build more parking. That's the issue. So we have to go across the street to build it. Now, will there be some parking for the use? Yes. Enough for accessibility, maybe a handful for additional, but a vast majority of our parking would have to be located across the street to make the project work.
I would say in the case of the properties we're talking about, since they're not assigned spaces, it'll be first come, first served with whatever spaces there are. So
It is. However, when you're trying to attract somebody to come in and develop a project, They want to see the availability of those spaces. They don't want to be fighting about those spaces.
Sure. Well, good luck with that. Have anything else before we close the hearing?
So save me some time here. If somebody's off-site, so we can't, the parking has to provide for it within that district.
Yes, you can't, for instance, if you're adjacent to like an R district, you can't have the offsite parking. It has to be in the IM district. The use is in the IM district and the offsite parking must be in the IM
And
district.
then could that other district use this lot for
No.
its use?
No, this is only, it's like, it's inter rather than intra. It's within the, or intra rather than inter. It's within the district only. These types of arrangements are
Okay,
allowed.
so it wouldn't, I mean, not that I would be opposed. But like, it wouldn't become like an EB lot. or
No.
Something else. I mean, and that's not, I'm just suggesting using.
Unless EB built a facility within 500 feet of that parking
Gotcha,
lot
got it.
in the
The
IM.
business has got to be in that. And then this
Yeah.
provides parking within that.
That's why
This is
I said the word,
serve that facility.
yeah.
All right.
Sometimes you'll see satellite parking lots that are miles away from uses. That's not what this is.
Commuter lots and that kind of.
That's
thing.
not what we're proposing, right?
Is it the lot that's right across from the health center? What is that? Who owns that lot?
Across the street from the health center.
Where,
That's what you're talking about. I don't know who owns it, but.
so he's got
that lot-
signs up.
But
You're
that
gonna be
lot
on
was
camera.
built to service the medical center and the other facilities.
If using this.
Exactly, using the old regulations.
Yes, it always seems kind of, doesn't get used very much.
There was a time when, I don't think it was the medical center, but the other flex space.
Yeah,
It
okay.
was
Is it on the other side of 117?
No, it's
No.
on the other side of Pagana.
Okay.
When you
Close
pull
one,
into
big one, yeah.
Pahegana, on the right
Yeah.
is the Yale Health or whatever.
Right.
And then on the left is
On the
this
left, I know what you're
abandoned
talking
sort
about,
of, it's a lot and it's got a lot of signs that say,
Yeah.
okay,
And back in the day, that was a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for your time tonight.
We'll move to close.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, a second
How are
that,
we doing? So, close the meeting.
sorry. There's only
Close the
three
second,
people
all
here,
all
so-
in favor of closing this meeting?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed, any abstained? The meeting on this subject is closed. According to our agenda, we're going to move on to the hearing for Crystal Lake Apartments, just the CAM, right? You have a presentation on that?
Sure. Notice is hereby given that the following public hearings will be held Tuesday, July 8, 2025 at 7 PM in Community Room 2, Town Hall Annex, 134 Groton Long Point Road, and virtually via the Zoom platform to hear the following. Special permit number 250001 CAM 0 Crystal Lake Road, pin 1780183223441. CN Zone, Nautilus Memorial Design District. MMDD overlay. Proposal is to construct 2 multi-unit buildings containing a total of 92 dwelling units, 2 accessory buildings and associated amenities. Review is per sections 5.1-8.g, 6.5 and 9.4 of the zoning regulations. Zoom meeting link will be posted to the town's website meetings calendar. Applications are on file and available for the public inspection during normal business hours at the Planning Department, 134 Groton Long Point Road, Groton, Connecticut, dated this 27th day of June, 2025 at Groton, Connecticut. Sue Sutherland, chairperson.
He's muted.
He's right behind me, so.
Oh.
Can you make that a full screen? You just make that full screen. Maybe share the share button. Share button. On top. Just leave it like that. I'll work with that. It's fine. All right. Good evening. I promise there'll be other people other than me talking today. Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a partner and land use attorney at the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London, Connecticut, and I want to thank you for having me. I appear before you tonight on behalf of my client 00 Crystal Lake LLC, which has submitted applications for special permit, site plan, and coastal site plan review for the approval of a new 92-unit multifamily residential development on its property located on the southern side of Crystal Lake Road, directly across from the U.S. submarine base. And as Joe has shown, the area that we'll be talking about tonight is outlined in red. This property is located within your neighborhood commercial district, where multi-unit dwellings are typically conditionally permitted by site plan approval only. But this site is also located within the Nautilus Memorial Design District overlay. If you look at the zoning map in front of you, the Nautilus Memorial Design District overlay triggers an additional special permit requirement for new construction. Joining me tonight, I have Josh Poitras. Josh is an experienced developer and site contractor. He's also the principal of my client. I have Joe DeHanel, who you're going to hear from later tonight. He's a civil engineer with Dupree Engineering. I have Tim McGee with us tonight. Tim is a landscape architect with Kent and Frost. I also have John Shelvin. John is our traffic engineer with Pear Engineering. And I also have Frank Karpowitz. Frank is a licensed architect with Frank Karpowitz Architects. Tonight, you sit in your administrative capacity on this application as you evaluate my client's applications for consistency with your zoning regulations, including both your special permit criteria and your site plan objectives, as well as the goals and objectives of the Coastal Management Act. As you're aware, you're required to base your decisions tonight on substantive evidence placed into the record. And if it meets your minimum requirements, you are required to grant an approval. This is a public hearing. We're going to be required to build a record tonight. We're going to try to do so in an efficient manner. We are also presenting all three applications simultaneously to you tonight, as in my experience, it's really difficult to separate those three issues on an application of this nature. For the record, notice of this hearing has been provided to neighboring property owners, and certification of that notice has been provided to the commission. Tonight, I'm going to provide you some brief background on the project, a broad overview, some relevant site conditions. I'm going to address zoning and coastal management compliance. Mr. DeHamel will review the site plan itself, all the related engineering details, including the layout of the two residential buildings, their associated parking areas, amenity buildings, stormwater management features, and utility infrastructure. He's also going to talk about the fairly extensive site work that's required on this site to prepare this site for development. Mr. McGee will review the landscaping and lighting plan for the project, and he's going to discuss the amenity packages here in this development, including a nature trail that winds through the southern portion of the property. Mr. Shelvin will explain the traffic analysis that was conducted. He'll discuss expected traffic generation, impact to nearby intersections, and address overall safety concerns. And then finally, Mr. Karpowitz will share with you the architectural drawings for the residential and the amenity buildings. He's going to focus on exterior design. He's going to focus on materials as well as the interior floor plan layouts. And our team will remain available tonight if you have any questions regarding the project. I'll end tonight with just some concluding remarks. So first, some background. The project site, which you see before you on the screen, is known as 0 Crystal Lake Road. It consists of a vacant and heavily wooded 8.4 acre parcel of land, again, located in the CN district, but also within the MDB overlay. The project site, if you had a chance to get out there, is quite steep. The existing topography drops down from south to north and toward Crystal Lake Road. While it's vacant and forested, this site has had significant evidence of past excavation and disturbance. It also has some limited inland wetland areas, including a man-made one that was formed at an old gravel borrow pit that intersected the water table. It will be filled as part of this project, and we have an approval from the Inland Wetlands Commission to do that. The surrounding neighborhood is quite diverse. It's dominated by the U.S. submarine base located directly across Crystal Lake Road to the north. To the immediate west of the site is an automobile repair facility, and farther, there's the Submarine Forest Library and Museum right at the banks of the Thames River. To the south and up gradient through the woods is a single-family neighborhood that's accessed from Military Highway. And to the east, there's a few rental apartments right along Crystal Lake Road, and then additional vacant forested land out to Route 12. It must be noted that this property was previously approved back in 1999 by the Zoning Commission for a multi-unit development. That project was never actually constructed, and all the permits for that project have long since expired. The proposal before you tonight, though, and we're going to share with you in a few moments, is for the construction of a 92-unit multi-unit dwelling development spread across 2 residential buildings. As I mentioned previously, the parcel lies within your NMDD overlay. And while multi-unit dwellings are a conditional use in the CN district, they do require a special permit when they're in the overlay. Now, if you look at the zoning map, you'll see that the NMDD overlay is an odd and unique overlay zone. Today, it encompasses just 3 properties in the whole town, and all of them are on the south side of Crystal Lake Road. They are effectively this property, and this little property with the rental apartments on it. Our property before you tonight is the only one that's undeveloped at this time. The stated purpose of the NMDD overlay is to permit and control development within the district, to protect and enhance the primary entryway to the Nautilus Memorial, to service tourist-related and Navy needs, and to provide protection to adjacent residential areas. The NMDD overlay modifies the CN district in 2 ways. Both are dimensional changes to the bulk and dimensional standards for the district, which include a maximum building height of just 30 feet and a minimum front yard setback of 50 feet. You'll see tonight that our development meets both of these requirements. We also will show that we have just a single curb cut accessing the development from Crystal Lake Road, which is in compliance with the requirements of the NMDD overlay. You will hear also tonight that the design of the proposed 92 apartments meets or exceeds the multi-unit dwelling requirements of section 5.1-8.g of your zoning regulations. We have the required storage, the laundry, the outdoor private areas, the architectural treatments, the recreation and community amenities, and all the underground utilities that are required by your regulations. We've also submitted narratives in our application demonstrating our compliance with your special permit criteria and site plan objectives. As I said before, this is in the coastal area management zone. This is not waterfront property, obviously, but the western portion of the site here is within the coastal management area and is considered undeveloped shorelands. There's no anticipated impact to any coastal resources from the project, and our stormwater management and erosion control, sediment control plans, which Joe DeHamel will share tonight, fully address any concerns with any indirect impacts. From our perspective, this multi-unit dwelling project responds to the need for new multi-family housing opportunities needed in this community to serve the expansion of electric boat and support the U.S. submarine base. In fact, I'm happy to tell you tonight that we've worked very closely with the Navy on this project. We received approval on our design that we're going to show you from their community liaison. And we understand that there's great interest in this project as so many service members are looking for high quality housing opportunities here in Groton, especially so close to the base. As you're aware, Groton's 2021 housing market study, which was updated 2 years later in 2023, has identified the need for about 6,500 new units of housing in the greater Groton area. And while this is a fairly small and modest project, we think it does add to the effort to meet that demand. Finally, before I turn my presentation over to Mr. DeHamel, I would just want to acknowledge that there has been some public discourse recently regarding residential development in certain areas of this town and concerns over the availability of public space and facilities to support those developments. And while I don't think that that public discussion is necessarily relevant to your review of our applications tonight, and whether or not we meet your requirements. I do understand the concern, and I want to take the opportunity just to distinguish this project that you're going to see tonight from some others in the community. First, this site was approved for multi-unit dwellings over a quarter of a century ago, and its topography and its location really makes it appropriate for little else but a residential development to support the submarine base. Second, as you're going to see tonight, this project offers its residents substantial on-site recreational and community amenities. And you're going to hear a lot about them tonight. And we're really doing that as to make sure we don't unreasonably burden other community facilities. Third, this project proposes only 92 units on almost 8.5 acres of land, which results in a relatively low to medium density multifamily project, especially compared to some other larger projects that are going on in the community right now. And finally, most importantly, this project has very few direct residential neighbors, and we've worked extremely closely with the submarine base on our design to make sure the project integrates within the neighborhood and meets the needs and protects the interests of the U.S. Navy, which is consistent with the very purpose of the NMDD overlay. Now, I know there might be legitimate concerns with other residential projects in towns and at other sites, but I don't think those issues apply to this site or this project. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Duhamel to walk you through our plans in greater detail. Joe?
Thanks, Bill. Before I start, I want to see if I can improve the visual of this. No, not better than this part. All right. I'm Joe Duhamel with Dupree Engineering, office at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island. We've been working hand in hand, our office has been working hand in hand with the planning department and staff with Bryce and Deb on the proposed site plans and the layout. Before I get into the site plan, as Bill mentioned, wanted to show the topography across the site. The site has existing access off of Crystal Lake. With existing bike path along the frontage of the site. At that existing bike path and road is elevation 30 to elevation 148 at the rear of the site. It's a mixture of different slopes with stormwater ultimately flowing, kind of bisecting the site west to east, where the western portion going towards Crystal Lake and into the existing drainage system of Crystal Lake, and the eastern side going into the B series wetland, as Bill mentioned. The site is largely forested, as Bill mentioned, and has been used as a staging area over the years. It has suitable soils based on soil evaluations that we performed on site, with varying groundwater table elevations from 18 inches to 10 feet. Sandy loam material, loamy sand, all suitable for design. The proposed site layout encompasses a curb cut along Crystal Lake, 24 feet wide, with a central driveway to 2 parking areas. which includes 100 parking spaces. 92 residential units. The parking spaces will include 10 electrical vehicle installed at construction with 15 additional EV ready or make ready at a later time. The site will have bituminous berm, excuse me, crosswalks for pedestrian access. Circulation will be two-way access on both sides of both areas of the driveway areas. With a central mailbox location in between building 1 and building 2. Building 1, as we referenced, is the one closest to Crystal Lake. And building 2 is the one in the rear of the site. The site will have multiple dumpster locations with screening. Sidewalks, 5-foot wide sidewalks for pedestrian circulation. With additional sidewalk connection that ties into the existing bike path. Our driveway for the site will maintain the existing slopes of the bike path and have proper signage and striping for vehicles and pedestrians walking along there. Internal site, we have signage, stop signs and stop bars. We have additional signage for ADA spaces and signage for as one exits the site for the multi-use bike path. As Bill mentioned, the project will also incorporate on the eastern side clubhouse and storage building as part of the amenity package. That will be further reviewed by the project architect, Frank. And landscape areas for outdoor amenities, outdoor grill, outdoor seating area, and pool area. The proposed grades of the site will match existing grades at the curb cut, slope up into the development area, pad areas for the buildings and the parking areas, and then which is elevation 45 for the parking areas in the buildings. And the site will also incorporate a 1-to-1 riprap slope in the back of the south part of the project to tie into existing. Working hand in hand with the planning department, we incorporated a bench. It's this white gap in the middle of this riprap slope. The bottom of the slope, elevation 50, ties into to existing grade at elevation 100. So it's when we incorporated a vegetated buffer in between to help step the slope and provide a visual appeal. The site will have additional boulder walls along the western side of the project and 2-to-1 slopes along the northern section of the project. And the site also incorporates a tiered retaining wall design from the existing bike path. We have a tiered 4-foot wall section of landscaping and another 4-foot wall for grading into the site. Cross section of what I just spoke of as far as tying into existing grade at Crystal Lake. the slope of the project and tying ultimately into existing grade in the rear of the project. A perspective of project. Um, the site as it is today has existing water, sewer services that extend onto the project. So proposed use will tie into those sewer and water services and extend them into the project to service the new buildings. We worked with Groton Utilities on design and layout of these utilities. And we also provide electrical services that connect to the various transformers for the electrical vehicles and for the buildings. The stormwater design for the project has been designed to mitigate stormwater runoff for the project to a rate that's less than the pre-development development rate. It provides a water quality pre-treatment system that has been designed to the Connecticut stormwater quality stormwater manual. The design of the stormwater system incorporates deep sump catch basins, pre-treatment devices like a cascade proprietary device, underground detention systems, and underground detention pipe systems. Stormwater will be captured by the closed drainage network, which is the purple. Actually the dark gray closed drainage network, and discharge into those two hatched. There's an underground system between building 1 and 2. And on the east side, there's a pipe system. Both of these systems will capture the water, provide water quality treatment, and obtain the water before ultimately discharging into the existing Crystal Lake drainage system as the existing addition does today. Combined, the stormwater will ultimately goes into the naval sub base, and that was an item that was discussed with the naval sub base early on in the project, and they have provided a review and approval of the design based on that. In regards to project, the project proposes to phase the development where into 2 phases. The green, as it's highlighted, is phase 1 would be including all construction improvements, all infrastructure, all drainage, all utilities for the site, and include building 1, the amenities, the clubhouse, and the storage building. Second phase would incorporate getting building 2 at that time would be a pad ready building and become vertical. In regards to soil erosion management and soil control, we have developed a plan working with the planning staff that incorporates different sequencing and phasing for the project. This includes placing silt fence, silt fence around the perimeter with a wood chip backing, including a temporary construction stabilization pad for construction vehicles and temporary pavement from the edge of Crystal Lake into the site. Includes installing in different phases the 7 traps and soil erosion for the site. And as the site is modified and excavated, these 7 traps will be updated and incorporated as the construction staging works. We included locations for construction vehicles and processing material, and areas for the stockpiling of materials. Essentially, all the work would happen in the first sequence, and first sequence and the second sequence, and allow material to be exported out to town approved areas, and to get the project ready for pad ready and infrastructure. Additional sequences include installing the underground drainage systems and ultimately constructing the buildings in different phases. Let's see. That's in general everything I want to touch upon. With that, I'll give it back to Bill.
Thanks, Joe. We'll certainly answer questions at the end of the presentation too, but Tim, our landscape architect, and Ross, just his presentation.
Good evening. My name is Tim McGee. I'm a landscape architect with Ken Frost Landscape Architecture here in Municipal, Connecticut, located at 1 High Street. So my office was tasked with developing the planting plan for the project, which we feel is in compliance with the zoning regulations. Down here in the bottom left corner, you'll see there's a dimensional landscape requirement table, which kind of summarizes the requirements of section 8.1 in relation as it regards to the landscaping. So you'll see that there are the required number of trees, square footage of trees and shrubs, and then what we are providing. So we're meeting and exceeding, and we're exceeding the landscape requirements. Overall, we're using shade trees along the streetscape, up the entry drive, surrounding the parking lots, and internal to the parking lots as well. We're utilizing various shrubs, perennials, ornamental grasses, predominantly in sort of large impact areas as you enter the site. And as Joe mentioned, there's on the landscape walls to help sort of hide some of those from the street view. In and around the buildings, we also have pretty extensive plantings, also including shrubs, perennials, and ornamental grasses. In areas where we can't meet the 5-foot requirement for turf, we have or are incorporating ground covers or low maintenance plantings as well. And then in and around the community room and the storage building, in our outdoor sort of amenity spaces, we're also sort of including those smaller plantings to help enhance those spaces as well. All the selected species used for this project are native or naturalized. They're all well suited for our climate. They should survive without any issues at all and require minimal maintenance. None of the selected species in this plant list are considered invasive. There should be no issues with unwieldy plants. While I'm on this page, I'm going to move into the outdoor recreational spaces, which we also were involved with designing. In the space between the clubhouse and the storage building, we have a 16 by 32 foot pool, including pool deck and seating elements. To the east of that, we're including outdoor kitchen, bar top seating, a dining table, and a pergola overhead. And then further to the right, we're including a fire pit with Adirondack chairs and seating. This entire pool area is surrounded with a pool fence, non-climbable, meeting state and local building codes for non-climbable fences. In addition to the amenity space adjacent to the clubhouse, we're also providing a naturalized walking trail. It's going to be a natural surface that will wind through the existing woodlands and utilize that slope that Joe was mentioning, starting out low at the clubhouse and the storage building and winding your way up the hillside, taking advantage of some of the clearing areas, areas of high visual, kind of a bird's eye view over the site, and providing seating elements, and then allowing you to loop back around and walk back down the trail, meeting up with itself and ending at the storage building. In total of our recreational spaces, both indoor, active recreational, which we're considering the pool area, and then passive recreation is the trail, we're providing 14,170 square feet of recreational space. The last point I want to touch on is the site lighting, which we're also responsible for. This is the photometric plan, which also includes all the site lighting. We're providing sort of a series of different height lighting elements. Along the main entry drive, we have your typical pole mounted lights. These are going to be LED on a 18-foot pole with a foundation that sticks out no more than about 3 feet. I know the regulations max is about 12 inches. Sorry, 3 inches is what we're providing. 12 inches is what's allowed. And so these area lights are around the periphery of the parking area, providing light into the parking zones. By the community room, we also have internally mounted, so back-to-back fixtures, casting light out from those fixtures. And then we utilize bollards in certain zones where we need additional light. Within this pool area, state pool code requires us to be at a minimum of 2-foot candles on the pool deck. So we have an area light it's kind of obscured by these trees, but we have a area light pole that's 12-foot mounted, helping to broadcast light across the pool deck, along with bollard lights that provide lighting around the periphery, sort of low lighting. Within the pavilion or the pergola, we have down lighting, sort of ambient lighting for the to illuminate the kitchen area, and then also sort of the walking space around the dining table. In addition, and the architect will talk a little bit about this as well. There are building mounted lighting, like wall sconces that cast light down, that are going to be mounted at the main entryways, and also at each of the porch zones or the rear porches of each of these buildings. So those are shown on here as well. One thing that we did take into account regarding the regulations is ensuring that we have specific optics and house side shields on areas to keep the lighting levels at the property line below the required 0.2-foot candle. And over here under the lighting summary, you'll see our overall site average, which includes all these photometric points with an average of 0.35. For overall site, parking and drive lanes are at 1.39 and sidewalks are at 2.32. That elevation, that's a little bit elevated because of that pool code requirement. It's also taking that into account. And it's also taking into account that the lights in and around the parking lot are behind the sidewalk. So it's also casting light down on the sidewalks from those area lights. All of these lights we're anticipating they're all LED, they're all downlight, dark sky compliant. There aren't any that have uplight And then all the photometrics, all of the Kelvin temperatures are warm white, so in that 33,000 to 3,500 range. So it's not too blue. Out along the street, we did not provide lighting. There's two existing utility poles that have Cobra mounted fixtures that provide illumination along the street. So mostly all of our nearest pole is right at the crosswalk, which we thought was important to provide a little extra illumination. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Sam. Sheldon is, go over our traffic analysis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is John Shovelin from PAR Corporation, traffic engineer with PAR for many, many years. PAR was hired to go ahead and do a traffic study for this 92 unit residential development. Basically, what we want to do as part of our study was look at two things: the traffic safety and the traffic capacity that's occurring under existing conditions, and also what could be in the proposed conditions with the development. The first step that we did in the traffic study was data collection. We did manual turning movement counts during the morning and afternoon peak hours. We also obtained crash data for the roadway network surrounding the project area over the last 3 years. We also did field reviews, go ahead and take a look at geometric measurements, traffic flow, traffic patterns, anything as far as safety, signals, signage and such. And we also coordinate with the planning department from the town of Groton just to talk to them in regards to other developments that may be current within the area, so we can include them as part of our study. As I mentioned, the main areas that we looked at as part of our study was Crystal Lake Road, which included the intersection of Crystal Lake Road with Connecticut State Route 12 intersection. So the first thing after we got our data collection is we went in and we did a safety analysis, and that was two components that we looked at. We looked at both the crash data in regards to what's occurring to see if there's any patterns of crashes that are occurring out there that would need some mitigation to improve the safety. Based on the information we gathered for a 3-year period, there were only 12 accidents within that Crystal Lake Road corridor, and that included Crystal Lake Road at Route 12 intersection. At that intersection, there was only one reported accident in that area. Other 12 crashes, there was no fatalities, there was no injuries with the crashes that were reported. Many of the accidents, well, 4 of the accidents were rear end. There was 3 that were single vehicle crashes. So we didn't see, and then there was a few miscellaneous ones that are either angle or side swipe with people changing lanes. But we didn't see any patterns in any certain areas that warranted any kind of safety measures that we felt were necessary. In addition to going ahead and taking a look in regards to crash history, one of the main things we want to do is make sure you have safe access in and out of the site. So we do a site distance analysis, and that is determined based on speed studies that are done to determine what the actual speeds are that are occurring within the corridor. The posted speed limit out there, is most of you know, is 25 miles per hour. We found that the average speed is about 35 miles per hour for each driver, but we found that the 85th percentile speed, which is a speed that 85% of the cars are traveling, and which is used in order to go ahead and determine what the safe distance is in order to be able to go in and out of a traffic stream. That was 41 and 40 miles per hour, was 41 heading westbound, 40 eastbound. But we did our analysis on a conservative number. We used a 45 mile per hour design speed. So getting in and out of the site, as you know, that roadway area in front of the site is pretty much on a tangent. You got clear visions on both sides, so the sight lines far exceed in regards to what need to be required based on the engineering standards determined AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials document that helps with the roadway design. So the sight lines that we measure were over 500 feet, so you have clear sight lines as far as being able to traffic oncoming, and it gives the motorists plenty of time to go ahead and make a decision in regards to make sure they can avoid any collision. The traffic capacity issues were the next items that we looked in the study. So we looked at 3 conditions: the existing conditions, which were based on the traffic counts that we obtained. Then we looked at a future no build condition, which is what is occurring out there without the proposed development. So we take into account in regards to the annual growth rate factor that we apply to determine what the annual traffic grows over the course annually over 8 years. And then we also went ahead and coordinated, as I mentioned before, with the planning department as far as any other developments in the area. We were notified that there was one development at 1002 Route 12, which is a multifamily 58 unit residential development that we determined what the traffic volumes were for that. We include that into our capacity analysis. Just as far as the annual growth rate factor, the census data is where you usually get as far as what the growth is. That was a 0.2% per year in annual growth. We put a conservative growth rate factor on there, 0.5% in order to go ahead and develop what the traffic volumes would be. The trip generation for the site, for the 92 units, we use the manual, the 11th edition of the trip generation manual. That's put out by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. This is a manual that goes in and estimates as far as how many trips will be generated from different types of land uses. So they have, what we used for this particular project was Land Use Code 221, which is for multifamily housing. And based on that, you're able to determine or estimate in regards to what the volumes of traffic could be occurring during the AM hour, peak hour, and the PM peak hour to apply that to your analysis. This is a relatively small generator for the 19 units. During the AM peak hour, it's anticipated that 34 trips will be generated, and that's 8 trips going in with 26 going out during the morning peak hour. Then the afternoon peak hour is 36 trips during the peak hour with 22 entering and 14 exiting. Once we have those volumes on there, we distribute them, distribute the traffic based on engineering judgment as far as where we see the traffic volumes flowing. And then we go ahead and we apply those and distribute those throughout the system. So as you can tell, during those peak hours, it's not, we're looking at, as far as overall trips, maybe one trip that's occurring every 2 minutes or so that's being generated from the site on average. Once we have the trip generation, trip distribution all done, we do our analysis. The analysis is determined based on the level of service, which is a quality measure describing how roadways and intersections operate. They range from level service A to level service F. Obviously, level service A is the best condition, level service F is the worst. Our analysis show that comparing the future no build to the future build, the intersections and the approaches at each of the intersections really have no significant change whatsoever as far as delays. It's under less than a second for any of the movements. The intersection of Crystal Lake Road and State Road 12 that operates a very acceptable level service, a level service C for both the AM and PM peak hours. And the worst case approach is level service D, which is also acceptable level service. But there's been no increase there more than 1 second for any of the approaches or the intersection in general. So with that, we went ahead, we took a look in regards to, summarizing it and the capacity analysis and the safety analysis. We believe we can see any significant impacts to the roadways and the traffic flows and traffic generations in the area. The safety analysis, we did recommend that, pavement markings be placed across, and I think Joe mentioned across the proposed access to warn of the crossing, and also put additional signage in for both the motorists in the site coming to Crystal Lake Road, and also for any of the bikers who are coming towards the intersection, let them know that there's a driveway coming in. So in summary, we feel that based on what's being proposed here, there'll be no significant impacts overall to what we see for traffic capacity or safety in the surrounding area. So I'll be available afterwards if anybody has any questions in regards to traffic. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Just finally, we have Frank Harkowitz, our architect.
Yeah, well, I think we'll just need to look at the plans at the end. Good morning, Frank Harkowitz. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. President Frank Harkowitz Architects. The previous rendering, just for perspective, was up about 40 feet above the street. We're kind of looking straight across it, a couple feet below the parapet. So we're literally about 40 feet above the street. This next rendering that Joe had up, that's taken about 6 feet above the street level. And we kind of did both of those to illustrate how much of the equipment is really blocked by the screening parapet that wraps around the building. So that's kind of the context there for those renderings. We know there's 92 units. It's going to be a mix of studio and 1-bedroom apartments. We'll see on the floor plans later that the 1-bedroom apartments are on the corners because you end up with bigger units on those corners of each of the 3 stories. So you've got 2 3-story buildings, 92 units, mix of 1 bedroom and studio apartments.
Early on, the Navy expressed an interest in keeping the buildings low and more of a traditional form. So in that interest of reducing or softening the building's massing, we incorporated a traditional mansard design, or mansard roof. Over the course of several meetings with planning staff, we've incorporated their feedback by including traditional horizontal lap siding with contrasting complementary color schemes and traditional design details like those dormers with the gable roofs in the mansard roof. The building height is at its maximum 30 feet. We've got a 2.5 foot parapet that kind of wraps around the building and screens the rooftop equipment and the elevator overrun. You can see from this view, none of that equipment or elevator overrun will be visible. The material colors vary. We've got a darker roof, we've got white horizontal at the second floor, and we've got a darker complementary but contrasting gray at the lower level. Those meetings with the planning staff also introduced some, you can kind of see it in the corner here, but there are exit stairs here. We've incorporated roofs over those instead of just a recessed area of the building. So that's kind of a minor entry detail there. Also following staff guidance relative to meeting the zoning ordinance. We've got the planes, our max plane is within the allowable distance, meaning we don't have any long walls. We've got offsets of 2 feet or more. So it breaks up, again, I believe the intent is to break up the massing and eliminate that big box that you see in some communities without that type of ordinance. And that translated to the rooftop screening and those type of elements as well. All right, so if we can just maybe scroll through the plans. The layout is pretty traditional: center hallway, elevator core in the middle, entrance in the middle. As I pointed out, we've got 1 bedroom unit, 1 bedroom, those corners as well. The rest are studios. And that's repeated on all 3 levels of both buildings. The next, at the last drawing in this set shows the amenity buildings. We've got a clubhouse, which has an exercise. Yeah, on the bottom. So the clubhouse is on the right. We've got an exercise room. We've got a multi-purpose room, which could be used for parties or events. Poolside, pool is over to the right. Lobby, a couple of bathrooms, and some storage for pool deck equipment, and also a room for pool equipment. The storage building includes storage stalls for half the units of varying sizes. But for 92 units, we've got 46 individual storage carrels or areas. That's the overview. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I will point out that on our floor plans, we include the total area of the units, decks, and also patios for the first floor. So those are on there as well. All right, thank you.
As I said before, we'll be available if you have any questions about any of the presentations tonight. We're trying to give you an overview and allow you to, if you want us to drill down on any specific item, we can do that. I do want to thank you for your time and your attention tonight. Just a reminder, you sit in your administrative capacity tonight, and you're to make your decisions based on the evidence that's in the record, which is our submissions, our narratives, and the testimony that you heard tonight. I also remind you, you're required by law to give due weight to the expert testimony that you heard tonight from our professionals. I think we've demonstrated our compliance in both our submissions and the testimony tonight with the NMDD overlay requirements, the underlying CN district, and certainly with the state coastal management policies and objectives. The project, I believe, is consistent with your POCD. It's compliant with the applicable zoning regulations. And at this location, I don't think it proposes any negative or adverse impacts to the greater Groton community. In fact, I think this site has been approved for multi-unit dwelling previously. And tonight, we are asking you to reapprove it for such use again, and to provide much needed housing for Navy service members and others in the community that are looking to call Groton home. And with that, I want to close our presentation tonight. Again, our team is ready to answer any questions you have, and certainly I would reserve any rebuttal from public comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're up.
Notes on special permit, notes on site plan. You want me to do both back to back, or you want me to hold off for the site plan, the site plan?
Why don't you hold off on the site plan, because we're going to confuse those pretty badly.
Property zone CN located in an Memorial Design District is within the CAM. Applications for the special permit and the CAM. Notifications, all required notices and referrals have been made. Staff has confirmed that all certificate of mailings are in order. The site is not within 500 feet of any other jurisdiction. Today, staff has received no comments on the application. While multi-unit dwellings indeed are allowed in the CN zone with conditions, the Nautilus Memorial Design District requires a public hearing for multi-unit dwellings subject to those performance standards, the front setback, the height of the reduced height that he's talked about. All performance standards for the NMDD and conditions for multi-unit dwellings are met. Special permit criteria, the narrative, you'll see that they went through each criteria point and addressed them. Again, the Navy has reviewed this pretty extensively. I'll just note, I'll get ahead of myself a little bit on the trail. We went, pretty extensively asking over and over again, are you okay with the trail? Okay with the trail overlook? They're okay with everything. I think they're excited about the units coming online. Again, CAM, the application asserts that impacts to nearby coastal resources will be limited through the use of mitigation measures. ENS measures will prevent sedimentation to nearby coastal resources, and all stormwater on site will be treated to limit total water volumes discharged to that Crystal Lake system, which eventually goes to the systems of the dams. There will be significant grading and earthwork involved in getting the site to the point that it's buildable. We've worked pretty extensively with the applicant to provide as much information as possible to talk about what that's going to look like, especially around the cutting and filling required on the site. And you will see, I'm sure you saw in the draft motion that environmental bond will be required and conditions of approval around that site were also included. That's all I got.
All right. Anyone in the public? Looks like you're all part of this party here. Have anybody out there? No, we do not.
Nobody.
So, Stephen?
Well, I got questions, but again, like you said, there's site plan and special permit. So right now we're just approving a special permit. So the special permit, if we go into our regs, there's certain special permit criteria, which they did step through many of them. Neighborhood compatibility, I guess there's only some residential.
Side of the hill.
Yeah.
So the disturbance on the site, other than the trail, really doesn't even reach up. We've got a detention basin, is that it, up at the top of the hill? And it doesn't even, and doesn't even really get close to that. And so the residential is really those units, those rental units that are kind of carved out right there along Crystal Lake.
Four buildings here.
That are in close proximity.
But nothing that's on the adjacent property towards the water. Okay.
No, there's nothing. You have the auto repair place, and then this is all sort of vacant rock and forest.
And the abandoned house.
Yeah, the abandoned.
But I think, what's important to realize, and I think if you see the site plan, and maybe we did, or maybe we didn't do as good of a job, is because of the slope on this property, we shifted the development really up into this corner here. And so this southern part is where we have the walking trails, or up on the hillside, so there's gonna be a substantial wooded buffer between the back of our development pad and the rear property line. And then there's still more woods until you get to, as Deb, I think, pointed out, the detention basin, which is right there at the back of this old cul-de-sac. So there's a substantial, and it's up above this project. We are down below. This is much higher than this.
And while we're on the subject, the eastern part is where the undisturbed wetlands are as well, which pushes it to the west. Yeah.
So everything's really shifted into this area. If you go back to the 1999 plan, it's called Up Harrisville was the company. They had sort of condominium townhouses built into the hillside and multiple roads going up the hill.
Mhm.
So we've consolidated this project to the developable portion of the property, we'll leave as much of the property untouched.
I guess just one question, and again, I don't know if it's site plan or special permit, but you mentioned phasing. And if phase one gets built, will the phase two property be cleared and prepped
Yeah,
along?
Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about the phasing in terms of what in phase two gets built in phase one?
What gets built in phase two is.
Or what gets cleared? I mean, is there gonna be a
The-
giant?
The entire property is, the green hatch, the outer limits will be cleared as part
Okay.
of the work.
Cleared, prepped, and
Cleared, prepped.
essentially, all right,
Yep, and then as part of phase one, the phase two building pad would be built, so it'd be ready for, the phase two is really just vertical construction.
Mm-hmm.
So we all prepped, ready, utilities tied into it, it's just a
Okay.
timing thing for. The
yeah,
owner
because
to-
things happen
Right.
and, it could be 10 years later. I was just curious.
Well, then, your regulations don't allow a CO on a building unless all the buildings are done, unless you have a phasing plan approved by this commission. That's very different than most towns work. So, talking with staff, it was strongly encouraged that we provide this phasing plan so that this building, which will be built first, can be occupied while we finish this building.
All right, and then I guess there's questions about like wall material, but I'll save that. That's
Michael?
Yeah, I don't really have, I think that most of what I would ask, I was gonna ask about the phasing because that wasn't clear to me. And some other questions which I don't think are part of the special permit.
Okay. Might be edging off of special permit just a little bit because, well, it's like the traffic, that's gonna be part of the. of-
Safety, yeah.
Of the,
Yep.
of the site plan or the.
No, special
No,
permit.
Special permit.
So, one of the issues with the traffic study that I have. Is that I completely understand the calculations going into the traffic. There you are. The intersections would certainly have tremendous capacity and because the subbase used to have that many more people, they've improved Crystal Lake Road, so now it's wide open. But it never had a driveway there. And part of what's going to happen with this development that's unique is that it's certainly going to be subbase centric. I would assume it's going to be full of chiefs and lieutenants and they're going to be getting into their cars and driving onto the base because it's about a mile walk to anywhere. No, it seems like it's right there, unless they work in security, they got a mile walk. So therefore, every one of those people is going to come out during the subbase rush hour, which is around 7 o'clock, and trying to turn left. And I didn't see that in your calculations. Coming back, not a problem. Everybody's going to come out at the same time, turn right, that'll be beautiful. But turning left, and they're not going to be going each way. In the evenings, they'll go everywhere. That's where your calculations seem fine. But the turn left there seems to be all this opportunity for people to get T-boned that doesn't normally exist. It also means that for people exiting, which might be a very much lower number after the fact and going into town, that's a new driveway with a certain number of people, 30 people coming out during the hour, one every 2 minutes, that didn't exist, into a huge traffic stream as everybody at Subbase exits around the same time within an hour and a half. So that part didn't exist, and it has nothing to do with the intersections. So that wasn't in your presentation. So is this addressed at all?
The analysis that we did take a look at what the worst during the peak hour that we did counts for, the peak hours we did counts for. We took the worst case hour where the most traffic was there. Our model shows regards to the 2 lanes in each direction. And we also took into case what the most traffic will be during the peak hour to put them in the turning, to have them going in and out of the site. And also those were taken into account as far as when we ran the analysis of the model in regards to the worst case volumes that are occurring during the heaviest peak hour flow. Then also the traffic that will be going in and out of the site based on the distribution. So it does take that into account as far as 2 lanes in each direction, the volumes, and then what the peak volumes would be coming in and out of the site during those times, with an estimate in regards to how many are gonna be taking a left turn, right turn into the site, and based on the volumes, the left and right out of the site.
Okay, because you didn't have a diagram. When you do an intersection, you have a diagram showing how many left turns, how many right turns, and we didn't get one.
Yeah, it is in the report in regards to.
It is in the report?
Yeah,
Full report?
where we show the existing conditions,
Okay.
the future no build, future build, and we show the volumes during those time periods.
Okay, good. I mean, offhand, it looks as if there's going to be a stack of guys in cars waiting to jackrabbit to get out of there.
Mhm.
Certain number of cars peel off and go into the truck gate, and then they're going to be guessing who's not going and who's going to be going forward. And that looks scary to me, but you're saying that is accounted for in this.
In the analysis that we did, yes, as far as the volumes that are occurring out there.
There is a picture. Oh, I didn't see it. Yeah, that could be zeros. See, it's not. You're showing me right now page, what is it?
This is
Page
page,
85.
well,
but that's-
85 of the package.
That's the existing traffic volume, so. it doesn't exist
Figure
right
3.
Figure 3, yeah, so
Yeah.
figure 3, obviously there'll be no traffic coming out of the site, that's existing conditions.
Just for us non-traffic people, can you walk us through that, just what that says?
Yeah, so figure 3, so you got figure 3, 4, and 5. Figure 3 is for the existing traffic volumes that are occurring out there, so obviously the site's not there, so we're showing that there's no traffic going in and out of the site. Figure 4 is the future no build conditions, and that takes into account the growth factors, so you'll see the numbers are higher than what you'll see in the existing conditions, because you have the growth factor, the annual growth factor that we applied for that on a yearly basis. Then we also took into account the other traffic that's being generated from the other site over on Route 12.
Okay,
And then the future build, we put in the conditions in regards to, that's when we added the traffic volumes for the proposed
There it is.
site. And so we have those included in there. So you'll see they're within the traffic streams and they're also in the turning movements for the site.
this is PM peak volumes. Do we have one for AM peak volumes?
Yeah, they're both on there. You'll see the numbers that are not in parentheses.
Oh, I
Those are
see.
the
I'm
AM
sorry.
peak hour, and the one in
Gotcha.
parentheses are the PM peak hours.
Okay. Of
So
course, this one says that there's only 3 people turning left in the morning. That can't be. And
Per
20
hour,
and
right?
Yeah,
These are per
and
hour.
then 23 people
Yeah.
turning right.
yeah.
I would say that's probably the opposite.
Yeah, depending on who moves in there, it's more, if it's gonna be more of the Navy, it could be a little bit,
It would
it's gonna be a
certainly
little bit higher to the
be,
left.
something, everything about this is Navy centric, so I'm just assuming that number looks off.
Yeah, and that could be, I mean, like I said, it's still a relatively small number that's gonna be exiting the site. I understand in regards to the volumes that are occurring on the roadway, what's on there, so that figure, I should also add that figure 5 is just showing you in regards to the site generated traffic, which goes on to figure 6, which is added on to that.
Right. Yeah, but if I have, in fact, the 23, in fact, turning left at the peak AM,
Mhm.
trying to get in there between red lights, because It's pretty much a constant, well, pretty much a constant flow. There's that gap once the light turns, and that's a bit it.
Yeah, and I think in the morning and afternoon peak hours during the future build, you know, the volumes, particularly when you look in the morning, the volumes are lower, obviously, that are heading towards Route 12.
Oh,
In
right.
the
so-
afternoon, they're
yeah.
a little bit higher.
Yeah, that's not an issue.
Yeah, but crossing them over that time period, you know, the distribution could be maybe a little bit different, but it's just projected, but. You know, it could be maybe that number is taking a left, should be a little bit higher compared to the right, but still a relatively
So what do you,
small volume.
15 taking, am I reading that right? 15 taking a left off of Route 12?
Per hour?
And what figure are you on right now?
I'm on figure five.
Figure 5, yes. So coming up on Route 12, those are new trips that we had generating to that
Oh,
intersection.
that's new trips because.
In figure 5, that's new
Oh,
trips,
so
right?
that doesn't take into account existing trips.
Well, not for figure 5. Figure 5 is just showing you what the site is generating.
Gotcha.
All right,
Right.
so which one is the combined?
Figure 6. That throws the volumes from the future no build and the site generated trips into one diagram.
Let me get the number. 428 turning left. Those are backwards. And the 93 turning right, yeah, because they come the other gate. So I've got.
And that's where you get your D rating.
Yes. Well, that overall the overall intersection's level service C, but for some of the movements, particularly the left turn movement, it's a level service D, which is still acceptable.
Yeah, I agree with Hal that probably should be flipped.
We can,
Yeah, they've got 500 over 500 cars at that peak, and you've got. I'm reversing the numbers, so therefore like 23 cars trying to turn left into that flow.
Mhm.
Uh,
we can run
I
that.
think that needs to be
analysis, but I
run.
think- But
But obviously they'll do it when the light is red.
there'll be
Well,
gaps, and
when
they'll be able to go ahead and go in there when you stop the main traffic on Route 12. There's very little volume, so there'll be gaps that you'll be able to go ahead and cross.
What happens is
traffic
when
stream.
it stops at Route 12, then the southbound traffic can make the right-hand turn, which is part of what's accounted for
Right.
there.
Yeah,
It's still on Crystal Lake Road.
Yeah, the southbound right turn
No,
movement is
that's
relatively low.
That's right.
During the course of the peak hour for the southbound right turn movement, it's 93 in the morning, which is a relatively small volume over 60 minutes.
Yeah. I would like to see the evaluation of that. It's a little frightening, just because everyone accelerates right there. That's the reality.
Yeah, we could play.
It's
with
my
those numbers.
commute for 22 years, and I knew I
Yeah,
was just trying to get there.
yeah, no, we can go ahead and certainly run that analysis in regards to, I want to say playing around with the numbers, but looking at different alternatives.
Okay.
But I think
And
again,
that's-
though,
That is 2 lane right there.
it's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah,
That at least the question is whether it's safe to take a left-hand turn during those peak hours. I mean,
Correct.
we can talk about whether the number should be on one side or the other. The question is it safe to take a turn out of this place left during the peak AM hour?
That's
Or-
correct.
That's the question. And
And the amount of safety is not just, if it's 2 cars turning left, who cares? If it's 30 cars trying to turn left, that's a problem.
but 30 cars turning left.
Go for an hour.
That's
That's,
and when you have the southbound, when you have the northbound movement red, southbound movement, you're right, they'll be taking a right turn on red, but you're talking during the morning, only 93 cars in there over the course of 60 minutes. They'll
On a
find
good
gaps
day.
in there in order to go ahead and.
I
get the
I
traffic
agree.
stream.
I agree. But that's what I want to see an evaluation of, because the answer is, if it's just one car coming down every 10 seconds, you still can't make one. You can't jump into that unless there is a decent gap. And what we're kind of seeing is how long is the cycling of that intersection? 30 seconds?
I think it's a little bit, it's almost a minute, I believe.
Oh, because it's
For
got
the
a
overall
left-hand turn.
cycle.
It's got a
Yeah.
left-hand turn.
Right.
Which doesn't benefit this, so.
Right.
But so during that a 15-second period during the minute cycle, then they've got to be able to make their move. And it's one car every 2 minutes. That's correct.
So you got 15 seconds to make that turn
For 23 cars.
for 23 cars, which is plenty of time to do that.
Right.
within an hour.
You think so? Or do you want to do an evaluation of that?
I do. I mean, like I said,
Okay.
I think with the volumes that you have taken the southbound movement, it's a low volume. You'll have time in there. There's gonna be gaps in there for them to go ahead. You got 2 lanes, so you're gonna have a lot, you know, you take that in half too, because you're gonna have half of them in the right turn, half in the left, you're going in the left lane to take the turn. So the overall
No,
volume,
actually, they changed lanes right there.
yeah.
Because to get into the sub base, you change lanes into the right lane.
Yeah.
And that's why there's some maneuvering taking place there. And that's what makes it scary, is that you're jockeying with other cars and making a maneuver. And there's somebody making a left. Pardon me?
Taking a left out of the place, don't you want the cars coming down Crystal Lake Road to move to the right? So
You do, but they don't make it, but it's too close to make it, you have the whole length of Crystal Lake to make it over to the right. And somewhere in there, that's where we make it into the right. If they were all slugged over to the right away, that would be terrific, but they're not by any means. Because immediately to the right is the entrance to the truck gate, which is open in the morning, so you're actually staying to the left and then you move to the right.
It just seems to me if there are 1 minute cycles and you've got 60 cycles in an hour period, you have 23 cars making that turn. You've got the possibility of fitting in 60 times, but you only have 23 people trying to fit in. So it seems like you're 1/3 capacity that should be allowed.
Maybe.
If you were over 60 cars, let's say you had 120 cars taking a left.
Yeah.
Well, you got a minute cycle in an hour, well, that's twice as much. Now you got 2 cars trying to go in with each cycle. But it seems to me like it's not even close in my mind. It's a third of
Per
what-
cycle, you probably easily get 4 or 5 cars, and that's minute cycle easily. So,
Mr. Chairman, as a variant of what you were just saying, is there any modifications that say when there's a primary business where we think that there's gonna be a lot of cars? You said there was only 23 cars going, turning left on, because it's multifamily. But do we think that this is gonna be 75% owned by the Navy? Or occupied by the Navy?
Yeah.
yeah,
Occupied.
Yeah,
it's a relatively higher number that would be Navy staff that'll be there, but.
It's a full Navy,
Exactly.
working businesses too, but certainly the Navy has certainly expressed that they think their service members are deeply
well,
interested in
yeah,
this.
it seems that this is clear, this will be wildly popular. As was the one, Kitty Corner and the other one across the street, that's gonna be full of Navy people. This one be the champion.
And quite frankly, any use of this property is
Absolutely,
gonna have the same issue. It needs access to Crystal Lake Road.
yeah, absolutely,
And if it has anything to do with residential, there's gonna be left-hand turns to the beat.
absolutely.
AM hour. I guess in my mind, the question is, what's the intensity of those turns and how many turns are we talking about? You start talking about 23 turns, in my experience in 20 years, that's a drop in the
But I
bucket.
only came up with 23 turns, I just reversed the numbers he had here. I honestly think it would be, if you look back at the numbers of saying this is Navy people, what percentage do you expect Navy people to be renting from here? And they don't carpool very well, so therefore it's going to be quite a bit.
How many cars, what's the generation for generation? That's AM.
Overall 36. It was.
So let's say, and they all take a left. So now you have 36 people taking a left during the peak hour.
How do they get to 36?
He's just saying everybody's going, oh, well.
Everybody's taking a left, not just 23.
Out of 92
23.
people, I guess is the question.
Yeah, out of 92,
Well,
Partners.
not everybody leaves at the same time.
almost everybody, that's the issue with here, is that this is one of these observable things that you have to look at. Is that almost the entire mass does, they come home early. So the peak hour is actually like 3, which would always drive civilians crazy. The 3 o'clock, they're all taken off. But first thing in the morning, within a 45-minute period, it's piling up at the gate because they're all kind of heading out at the same time. So I think it's going to be, I think the numbers are low for people exiting because they will be in their cars. Very few carpooling. It's not spread over, they're not going other places, otherwise they live elsewhere. And so you're doing a great job of building elsewhere. So this is for people going to the Navy and they're going to the far side of base and they're trying to get in. So I think
So
those numbers.
are you saying it's backing up going in?
Oh, absolutely.
Site?
Back, absolutely. When you get to sub base, all those lines all back up.
And I think, but the volumes coming out are very low and in the morning.
Well, that's
So
what
you
I'm
are
thinking.
able to go halfway across and not have to worry about the volumes coming out, and you're able to get to the traffic stream. If it's slow there, people will let you in. More so than if it was, I think what you're thinking, it was free flow and people can't get in there, but I think if people are there and you're saying they're slow going into the site, they allow those cars even into the traffic stream if need be.
Well, if they're turning right, I'd say if the traffic going the other way, absolutely, you'll see a car parked at the curb cut and people will stop for that or let you go in near the light. If they're across the street and nobody's stopping, they're going to keep going. So this guy over here is trying to cut across 2 lanes of traffic to turn left. I don't even know he's there. I'm just driving forward. And normally that's kind of what you account for here, but I don't think it accounted for the numbers in the intensity that it's going to be because of this particular thing, which is mostly Navy guys. It's a sub-day, so it's mostly guys, mostly Navy guys, mostly going to the main gate. In fact, they can't even make it to the other gate because they'd have to turn right, then turn left to get into the truck gate. I
If you
just,
lived there in the Navy, you would use that gate.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Right.
so maybe looking back at exactly that detail, I think is called for. Because that one, and you're saying if it was the shops, if it was anything else, I have the same question. And it wouldn't be, no, you can't build it. Of course you can. But what do we need to do to the road to accommodate it? Or have to do with timing of lights or get to the state to time the lights or something like that. Some accommodation, not to set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah, and I think the timing does come into play in regards to the way it is right now. With the, when the northbound stop, that's the big movement that has probably the most green time in a cycle. But then you have the one southbound is the only movement that's occurring, or whether it's the eastbound, westbound movements. The traffic flow is relatively light in that area. When the northbound is stopped.
That's right.
And I think during that course of time where that is stopped and other movements are occurring, I think there is ample gaps in the traffic stream in order to get into the traffic stream. Whether it's 6 cars or whether it's 23 cars.
Is gap analysis a thing that you do or something like how big are gaps?
You could certainly go ahead and take a look in regards to what's out there between where the openings are.
Yeah.
Maybe.
As I, for one, would feel better if there was done analysis.
Yeah, is that queue length? Is that what?
No, that's just somebody that
That's
backed up.
How many cars are stacked up?
That's how many are stacked up at a red light.
Yeah.
You figure it's average 23 to 25 feet per car. And I believe it's like 350 or so. So you're looking at maybe 8 cars, 9 cars that are backed up in a lane.
And it's true, I'd say, if that was a traffic circle, this would be hopeless because there would just be constant flow of cars, but this is batch processing cars to some degree. But I don't have a good feel for that hour, what the gap is. Off hours, easy as pie. But for 2 hours a day, 1 in the afternoon that we'll be fine with, and 1 in the morning. And actually for not even the whole hour, because they're all trying to get there between 7 and 8. They're before 8 o'clock. Everything else? I think for this, that's all I had.
I'm just wondering, was it any analysis ever done for who is gonna live in this place?
Sure. No, I mean, that would be almost impossible.
Yeah, no,
But we certainly think it would be very attractive to.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
But it's certainly not, it's not a Navy housing, so there could be other people there too, but I think it's completely reasonable to believe that Navy personnel will be a primary occupant there.
If there was a right-hand turn, I'm just wondering if anybody who's turning right is gonna be queuing up and to lessen that load.
I don't think that's the concern.
That's not, no.
No, I mean, I think ultimately, I think what you're looking for, and let me try to restate it, is, I have a licensed traffic engineer. He needs to provide you an opinion as to the ability to exit this site during the peak AM hour taking a left turn. He needs to take a second look at his numbers and his estimates of turning movements. And then he needs to come back and say, as proposed, it functions. And as a licensed traffic engineer, I'm certifying that to you. Or Commissioner Zod or Vice Chairman Zod, you bring up a good point, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z to tweak our plan to better address the concern, because there is a legitimate concern there.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the kind of analysis you're looking
That's
for.
exactly right. And it's not just in numbers of volume, it's,
No.
so I say, here's how many second gaps there are, here's how many times there are that gap and that kind of thing.
I understand exactly what you're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it seems, yeah, I would
Do
be
you
more
think they
comfortable.
should modify the number that they use for peak?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I think what we would want to.
We said that
For left turn.
for the left chart.
No. Right now, you're gonna use 23?
Well, no, you just gotta take a look.
I think my expert would use his expertise to determine what the proper number should be.
Right.
I think what you've done is raised a question as to the accuracy of the assumptions that he used in his variables right now.
Exactly right.
He now needs to go back and say, okay, I've heard what Vice Chairman Zod said. Should I change these based on new information? And then come back and say, okay, it's not 23, it's 36 still, but it's 33 of them are left turns, and these are the reason why. Or it's not 36, it's 56.
That's right.
And 52 of them are left-handed. I think he needs to do the analysis because he's the one who has to stand behind it and certify it to you.
Exactly right.
No, and for me, I think that it's also important to, that I hear that that where it's beyond this intersection, so it's where are these cars going that we know, and what they're going to encounter when they get there was a security checkpoint, which could, slow things down. Just, maybe that was all in the calculations, but
I think it's operationally, how does Crystal Lake work during the AM peak hour between our site and the gates?
yeah, that's it.
Operationally,
Because
we
the
need-
gate is there, we should have that.
Again, we still have to model because it's still assumptions that have to go into it. But I think I think the commission has raised some questions about some of the variables. Let us go back, let us take a second look at that. Let us see if we can analyze that a little further and come back and be able to share those variables with you and why we think either the proposal or the model that we created is accurate, or if it's not accurate, how should it be changed and what are reasonable and rational variables to be used?
No, I don't think I'm that concerned. We'll get into the discussion here, but I don't think I'm that concerned about what happens at the gate. Because the total number of people showing up at the gate is not going to change that much. These people that-
I realize, but that,
And if it did, that's the sub base will just do, it's a staffing thing in sub base.
yeah, okay.
So,
It's just, I think it's a different place than what you would normally encounter, and I want to make sure that that's just being considered.
I understand the concern.
Yep.
And I think we can collectively address that for you.
Right.
Are there any other items on the special permit issue that you want to ask us questions about, discuss with us?
no special permit for me. I think we're
No.
good. Yeah. Given that we have an open question, we
Motion to continue,
motion to, okay, make a motion to continue.
August 12th.
I'll second that.
Make a motion to continue the hearing until August 12th. In favor?
All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor, yes. For this, that's for the special permit, right?
Right, for the hearing
Yeah,
for the special permit.
And we cannot,
But you cannot approve it.
Yeah, I get it.
but we cannot approve the site plan without a special permit in place.
Correct.
But you can.
So we can discuss it. And we'll have
And particularly if we're gonna have some time between the next meeting and we're gonna be working on this analysis, if you have other items, site plan related, that you want us to address, or if we can answer tonight, we'd rather use the time
Sure.
efficiently.
All right.
Thank you. So now we can
Regulation.
go on to, right, consideration of public hearings, go back to the offsite parking. So make a motion to approve zoning regulation text amendment application REGA 25-0003 to amend section 8.2-6 to create a new subsection, section 8.2-6.1, offsite parking in the IM zone, to allow offsite parking in the IM zone subject to conditions. The Town of Groton Planning and Zoning Commission adopts zoning regulation text amendment REG A25-0003 pursuant to the following findings and reasons for approval. This amendment is consistent with the town's 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development, POCD, with regards to recommendations specific to analyzing the zoning and allowed uses on current vacant industrial and commercial zoned land and reviewing parking requirements to ensure appropriate standards are in place for different uses and area to minimize water quality impacts. This zoning text amendment is made in accordance with the comprehensive plan for the town of Groton and provides for reasonable consideration of the environment and Long Island Sound in accordance with the provision of CGS 8-2. This text amendment shall become effective August 15th, 2025.
I will second to discuss.
We need a vote on. Just wait to discuss and any discussions.
Yeah.
You need a second. It confused me.
Besides the run-on sentence in one, offsite, is it hyphenated? We got it 3 different ways.
What?
I just have to.
Let me
regulation
check
to be right.
what's in there.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it in the dictionary, non-hyphenated, just check, just being in,
We will.
that's all.
Weren't we discussing the idea of whether it's
It is not hyphenated in the zoning regulations.
Is not,
No.
okay?
is it one word?
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
Both on-site and off-site aren't hyphenated. Actually, no. In the body of the text, there's hyphens. In the title of the text, there's not.
Somewhere in there, can we get consistency?
Sure thing.
Hey, look who's here.
you weren't here for the discussion of this, so we can't be part of this. Okay, so we'll bring you on as soon as we're done.
I have no more.
Okay, but we were talking about the ownership versus versus lease, or what did we say? Said, had the idea that it would be subject to a perpetual easement rather than be of adding perpetual easement required.
That would be on the deed. So I would, that at the very least, I would like to see some way that,
It wouldn't be on a deed, but it would be an easement filed with land records.
Right, that's
okay.
Right.
But then we're not requiring, right?
well, that's kind of what we're saying. So owner either owned or have a perpetual easement for the adjacent property rather than a lease, because we don't know how to manage a lease. And if it were an issue for this client, then I'd say, well, maybe we want to talk further on it, but right now it isn't.
Yeah, I'm just thinking,
But having the perpetual easement assures that no matter what goes there and what happens in the future, then it'll still be okay. We'll have that. If it's the lease, then all kinds of different things can happen out of our control, and the parking can just go away.
I'm
And
just thinking of the flip side. Owner A goes in, he needs extra parking. He leaves, owner B comes in, he doesn't need that. Can that property ever be used again? Because it's got a perpetual easement?
then it can come back and release the easement. The utility company doesn't need an easement, they can get rid of an easement. So yes,
But with action by the original person.
Yeah.
Did you catch that, Bryce?
One
Said owner A needs additional parking with an easement.
Mhm.
He backs out, leaves, company changes, another company comes in, he doesn't need that.
Mhm.
Can this property ever be used again? Because there's a perpetual easement on it?
I mean, yeah, easements can be
Revoked.
negated, revoked,
Right.
again, filing in land records.
Yeah, the perpetual, just kind of
But
perpetual
With
until
the
you change it.
agreement, right,
Until you
with the
change it.
agreement of
Yeah,
both. Exactly,
All right,
exactly.
I got you.
I don't know. And now I get confused.
So
I mean, it just, I know I understand all of those things, but it just seems like it makes something that should be just very simple more complicated. But
I think it's really simple.
Yeah.
I think it's actually might be more simple because if it's a lease, then it has to renew. It has to renew every year. And the terms.
no,
of it-
I'm not, I would not be in favor of a
Oh,
lease.
so just either ownership. You're just saying it should just be owned.
Well, I mean, I
This is
guess
a-
also that when I heard Steve just speak, and then he said, well, you can get rid of this or keep it or owner B and owner A. But I suppose if somebody owned it, they could sell it. If they didn't
They
want
could
it
sell-
anymore, right? If they
You can sell it,
decided
but
they
they'd still
didn't
be an
want-
easement.
It goes with the land.
No, I mean, if we required that that parking lot be owned. Right? And then I decide 10 years from now, I don't need that parking lot
Correct, yeah.
anymore.
Right,
It's not needed.
right.
Now I sell it.
Okay, yeah.
That's the same as what, I think that
Well-
that's the same as what we were talking about with the
With the
easement.
easement.
It could be
The easement can be released,
released, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So maybe then that, so maybe that's.
but that way it could be a
fine.
different owner.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess it's just, when Steve started going through this scenario, I'm thinking 20 years from now, and it's like, well, who knows, we're-
Maybe 2 years.
yeah,
But
I mean, it's not gonna be, that's
Yeah,
not where we're.
if a development goes in.
So,
back when I was thinking-
how about the number, having the ability to have no parking on site?
Well, okay.
Is there a percentage that we would want to say that there should be 10% or 20% or 50%?
Let me do this. Let's get the easement thing first settled. So we're in agreement with making the change for not having a lease, but requiring a perpetual easement.
Yeah, I would say that would be fine. That would-
Okay, so within the text.
Correct.
Right. You want, sorry, this is yours.
The section 8.2-6.1, number 2. You want the second sentence of that to read, however, evidence of a perpetual easement of such spaces shall be acceptable.
Yes.
So we're good on that. Was there conversation about on-site?
Okay, now this is another
Okay,
question.
okay, no. Is that what you were intending for that to be?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
that's, I think so.
Yeah, we don't have to make any other changes.
Not for that.
Yeah.
And now there's another issue of, or require some of the parking to be on site. For me, honestly, it's no. So
Yeah, but isn't this just addressing the offsite?
Yeah.
So how can this cover the onsite?
Well, you could
In the
essentially have
same
no on-site
way,
parking is what we, except for.
Isn't that a
handicap.
different section? Wouldn't that be a different
no.
modification?
In the same way as the last regulations allowed for excess parking off-site, right? I don't think it precludes the or adding any kind of language for a requirement for a certain percentage on-site within this section. Do you disagree?
Right, so if you look at just the general parking regulations, it says, you have to provide the parking on site, okay? However, this regulation amendment will allow in the IM zone that parking be satisfied off-site, provided there's perpetual easement or it's in the same ownership.
So the way we have it now allows that 100% could be offsite.
Although practically.
Could be.
speaking, Right,
Yeah.
the ADA spots.
ADA is impossible to do if you're gonna
Yeah,
have chargers, it's almost impossible to do. So
I don't know if you're gonna run electric over there.
that's right.
Try
So
to
it's-
do that.
So it's practically, it might not, it's very unlikely it would happen. because how it's possible to do.
So then maybe, is that
So I think
unnecessary?
it's unnecessary there.
Yeah.
That's why I see it, is that the practicality of it takes away the requirement. They can come up with some way to do all that across the street. Good luck, or in a different property, adjacent property. Right now, we're just doing it for this one set of properties, but it's anywhere in the side.
And if you go under that assumption of it's going to be very difficult to put EV chargers, required EV chargers off-site, there's 10% right there on site.
That's right.
Right, that is inherently required, besides even talking about ADA spaces. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Which one has to be EV, right? So that in mind, but yeah,
I'm fine,
Right.
suppose. I mean, I think that I'm a little uncomfortable, but I think that in practicality, it's not gonna be the practical way to build something.
Well, do you have a number? I mean,
No,
okay,
no, I just thought that, there might
because
be.
you said 10% are gonna be there anyway,
Likely, because,
likely, yeah.
because of EV chargers.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could just throw in, said spaces are within 500 feet of walking distance of the lot and shall not encompass more than blank percentage of the total parking requirements. We can throw that in there.
I
But
think.
give me a
I mean,
number.
I mean, it's like 10%. That's not unreasonable, I don't think. But I'm just thinking of people who aren't handicapped, who don't have a handicap sticker and just can't walk 500 feet easily.
Then it'll make that building less rentable. I mean, this is one of those
Yeah.
market things that's going to drive it.
Yeah.
You're gonna
And when
build-
they come here for site plans, they might have a little trouble.
All right.
or-
Yeah, I mean,
or
I'm
we-
not gonna convince, I'm just putting it out there.
There's
that-
support for 10%,
Yeah.
just to throw it in there. I don't think it's necessary, but if you do, it'll happen that way. No, okay,
Leave it as is.
It's fine.
that's it for me.
Okay.
All right.
So what do I get?
You got Deb writing this, you get to read my note.
This is an amended motion.
Oh, right. Oh. So we have to,
Because you've already made the motion
motion.
as it's written right there,
Right.
so now you're going to amend it.
all right, so make the amendment. We're going to,
Do we have to vote on the original?
You'll have to vote on the amended motion if indeed there's a second for it.
that's right. Okay. So we'll make an amended motion to approve zoning regulation text amendment application REG 825-0003 to amend section 8.26 to create a new subsection, section 8.2-6.1, off-site parking in the IM zone, to allow off-site parking in the IM zone subject to conditions and with the following modification. The second sentence of section 8.2-6.1.2 shall read, however, comma, evidence of a perpetual easement of such spaces shall be acceptable. Okay. You have to read the rest just to do the, no,
Amendment.
that's the amendment. So we'll vote on the amendment. All
Second.
I'm in
in
favor.
favor? Aye, aye,
Right.
passes. Now, since we amended it, let me read the whole thing, but to keep it a little level. I'm sorry.
Safest thing to do.
Hmm?
Safest thing to do. Let's
Let's-
do the whole thing.
We talked about it, we changed it. Now make a motion to approve zoning regulation text amendment application REG 825-0003 to amend section 8.2-6 to create a new subsection, section 8.2-6.1, offsite parking in the IM zone to allow offsite parking in the IM zone subject to conditions and with the following modification, the second sentence of section 8.2-6.1.2 shall read, however, evidence of a perpetual easement of such spaces shall be acceptable. The Town of Groton and Planning Zoning Commission adopts zoning regulation text amendment REG 825-0003 pursuant to the following findings and reasons for approval. This amendment is consistent with the town's 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development, POCD, with regards to the recommendations specific to analyzing the zoning and allowed uses on currently vacant industrially and commercially zoned land, and reviewing parking requirements to ensure appropriate standards are in place for different uses and area and to minimize water quality impacts. 2, this zoning text amendment is made in accordance with the comprehensive plan for the town of Groton and provides for reasonable consideration of the environment and the Long Island Sound in accordance with the revisions of CGS 8-2. This text amendment shall become effective August 15th, 2025. All in favor?
Need a second.
Hmm?
Need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? It passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that was public hearing. Now. Oh, we have to go through the minutes. Minutes of June 10th. Anyone have any changes for minutes of June? Oh, let's seat Lauren. Welcome
Thank you.
aboard, Lauren.
And just so for my records, we're continuing. Oh, I don't like the way that sounds. We're continuing the public hearing on the Crystal Lake.
That's-
Okay.
There's continuance on this.
Thank you.
And anyone have any changes for the, we'll make a motion to approve minutes of June 10th, 2025. For a second?
I do. I will second it.
Any corrections? Hearing none. All in favor of approving?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Public communications. Anyone want to say anything?
Long time. Jeff Pritchard, Westminster Avenue, Mr. I'm concerned with what's going on with the lack of progress of the POCD based on the last meeting. I think the people writing it are in the fog bank and their GPS is broken. Seriously, they should be I think the commission should take charge and force the way the process is going to occur to go through the POCD. The person was asked in one sentence as to what the purpose of the document is. He can't do it. Something's wrong because it's very simple. All it is to develop the document in accordance with the statute section 8.23. And I would think it would be good to have everybody go look at it, maybe make a matrix of what's required to be in the POCD and decide what they want to keep in and what they want to say may be accomplished by the town charter or something else that doesn't need to be addressed in detail. Because this statute is not very confusing. But we only have a few months left, and if you're only waiting till the end of this month to get your next session, you're not going to get any. Because they really were not addressing the real issues. And we've got to make a decision. What's the community supposed to look like? You drive around River Road these days, it looks like we're in Westport, but I don't know that that's what we want. And I don't think we want to have a high density town. We want to have it more rural and rely on the communities or nodes that exist today, like Norway and Mystic, City of Groton, Long Point, because the neighborhoods are important too. But I just think that we really got to drive, the commission has to drive the thing forth, not wait wait for months to have decisions. That's all I have.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else? Still no one out there. Lauren. We got it. Site plans. So let's go back. We're not going to approve it because you can't, but we can talk about the site plan for Crystal Lake Apartments. Mike, we can start with you.
So, let's see here. The parking that's, got 92 units. I know that there are 95. How many spaces are there? 105? 100. Okay, I counted 95. But included in those is the, I guess my concern is mostly how people are going, where they're going to park, how they're going to get to these buildings, because you've got the two entrances are in the middle of those two, and you've got better than half of the cars parked pretty much remote to that. And then especially on the north side of that east parking lot, and how they're going to get across. And is that, I don't know, like it seems like they're going to be walking in this really convoluted path to get there, given that there's no entrances to these buildings on the ends. So that's one concern. Just pedestrian flow seems kind of difficult.
Back entrance there, didn't it? Back to the stairwell.
Yeah. How about the other building? We got that one there too.
It does, but that wouldn't make any sense.
Thought that those corner were apartments. They were the
It's
one
on the other,
bedrooms, weren't
it's
they?
inboard, yeah.
So parking on the east side, there's sidewalks and a crosswalk where my cursor is. That will allow pedestrians to cross the driveway and continue north to the front of the buildings, and another crosswalk to cross that into building one. On both buildings, there's concrete sidewalks showing to the rear of two locations on each building in the rear, where there's stairways or stairwells for access into those buildings. So that's in the rear of building two, and then along the east side of building one, and then circling back into
Yeah, that one doesn't
staircase.
seem like that's even
in a staircase.
probably going to be used. But not by the people who are parking. And then I'm also wondering about the EV spaces there, those handicap spaces that are in the west parking lot on
Yes.
the north side. Both of those handicap spaces have EV?
Yes, we're
They do.
proposing.
We-
Um,
Are both of them gonna be live EV or is one a make ready? Cause I was having a
Red
hard
EV,
time.
I
Yeah,
thought.
no, but the designation for the active EV charging
I
versus
think- I
make
think the
ready.
requirement is one or is it 5%?
5%, 5% or one, so I
So
think,
if you do the math, it's like one, it's just over one, so we made those
Mhm.
two spaces as EV at construction ready,
Oh,
would be constructed.
wait a minute, is filled in?
There's a lot of business on the prints.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got the empty squares and filled in squares. Filled in square mean it's already provided, or does the empty mean it's made ready?
So the filled in squares are the to be constructed at the
Okay,
time of
all right.
occupancy, those
Backwards.
will be constructed.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
then the non-filled in are the level 2 EV make ready.
we can ask that those are more clearly defined the next come around too.
Or the non-filled in are make ready,
Correct.
which means that the one at the building for building 1 are just made ready. They're not going to be active.
So
One of those should be,
Ah,
The label says it's gonna be ready.
yeah, the label, that's right.
okay.
The label says it's gonna be electric vehicle ready. It's just,
The graphic.
the graphically wasn't filled in, the square should have been
Okay.
hatched in is what should happen.
Okay, so I wasn't completely whacked out. Maybe I am. Alright. Oh, is the storage building, what is proposed to be stored in the storage building? That's all for that's for the equipment lockers?
Um,
Anybody, with an apartment would have the ability to rent out storage in that building. It could be a bike, it could be camping equipment.
Yeah, no, thank you, that's great, but is there a place to load there, or is that a occupied parking spot? Like if someone's over there and they want to pull their car up and load a bike on or a kayak or something like that.
we kind of position, so there's 88 parking over there, but we can position the loading space of that to be in line with a ramp, so there's access to that north side of the building or west side. Let me see if I can go to
There's an overhead door.
the overhead door there, correct, right? Yeah. That's what I thought. So, there should be an overhead door. Oops,
Those access to their data space.
there's an overhead door adjacent to the pedestrian door. There's an overhead door here.
Okay, and so is the idea that someone would pull into that hatched area and load something up, or is there a spot that would be like kind of open for someone to
I
do
would,
that? How do you
envision-
do that?
I would envision they would park the vehicle in one of the available spots and then
Lug everything over to it?
load, walk over and load into the storage building.
Just move on and hope and see if anyone else has any other concerns and we can weigh in, but that's it for me for the moment. But that's something that I would like, I'm a little concerned about that spot there.
Lauren, you have anything?
No, I'm really happy with this.
Steven?
Fire department is good with this?
Yes, that's one thing I should have mentioned earlier, that we reviewed the design of the site, circulation with the fire department, and they also reviewed the location of the fire hydrant and approved the.
Where is that? I didn't see it.
It's actually the blue symbol that's.
Oh, right there.
And we, part of the fire department review, shown on the utilities page, is they wanted fire department connections.
So can they get to the front of the building?
Yes, they can, the vehicle could pull into, this front parking lot and then, traverse around the, island. It's a low profile, curbing.
No, the front of the building.
On Crystal Lake.
Oh,
Street side.
No.
They would get it from the street?
they,
There is that 50-foot setback too that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
their access point was, the, fire department connections at the corner of the buildings and then access into, the front. That was their requirements.
pulling a truck alongside the
No.
front of the building, but you can get people around the front, put up a ladder if you need to. And we are fire department connections from that central parking lot.
Okay. And we are too far from the road to fight it from the road.
Correct. There is some verticality though, if you look.
Walls. Line those.
castle wall.
I love the rendering, but that material on the wall, I'm sure that's just a standard thing. And I've seen good looking walls and bad looking walls. So is that gonna be a nice retaining wall? That's gonna be like the front and center of,
Yeah, I
Your
mean,
property.
we envision it to be, modular block wall. It's, attractive looking and it's, similar to what's depicted.
Let's depict.
it's like a
Looks like-
cobblestone
It
looking.
looks like stone to me.
Well, it's, yeah.
As far as the finish, split face.
Oh, it's
yeah,
a split face block,
face
so
block.
it's just a
I don't know
block
whether
wall.
it's-
Yeah, like I said, I've seen very attractive, very ugly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the last thing I'd want to see on that big a plane is, you know, something that's glorified cinder block, holding that up. Yeah, okay. Two other questions. Underground utilities, of course, all around the site. Everything down. All right, and then, yeah, and then, garbage.
We provide dumpster locations as one in the western parking lot. There's a trash and recyclable, and then there's one in the rear, towards the rear of the site. So one per building away.
One per building. And then accessible by, I guess, one of those.
Yeah, yes.
That is a technical term. I looked up. I think that's it. I asked my question about phasing and you said about elevators. Yep, that's all I got.
We'll go back to the on-site pedestrian access. For instance, if I live in building 1 and I'm parked at one of the EV spaces on that lot, the far lot. I think the pedestrian access to those isn't really well thought out. I don't know how to do it.
You gotta walk all the way back.
I have to walk, but with no sidewalks, I'm gonna just across traffic to get to even where? I don't even know where to get to. I think just missing a piece.
We can,
Maybe there's some stairs that are needed to connect up with that other sidewalk, but something.
where my cursor is, I'll zoom in here. Actually. You have a different sheet. The grading plan.
Mhm.
We could certainly look to add a connection from this
Right.
this
Yeah.
point to the EV parking.
Absolutely.
Grade wise, it seems to. It could work, so.
Just gotta make sure that you keep the proper setback for transformer.
Ye-
Because the utilities has sort of deemed that that's where they want the transformer.
Okay.
We don't want the transformer out front where you can see it.
No, that's a good place. That doesn't need to be directly into it, but it needs to go somewhere, and it can't be at the end of a parking space. You need a clear space so people aren't just squeezing between cars to get to it.
Let's take a look at it, see if we can address your concern.
Because right now, we're just walking in the street and in the sidewalk, and it's just, you can't get there from here.
Okay, we can look into it, yes.
And other than that, I love the 3500K lights, by the way. I have to say that. I'm a little disappointed that, as you mentioned, the previous plan stepped up the hill, and here we have a plan that's sort of made for a big flat site, and instead it's shoehorned onto an intensely sloping site, so we end up with building it up on a 14-foot plinth in the front and digging 35 feet into the hillside in the back.
That's partly because it's partly because of the site costs involved, but it's also partly because of the Navy's desire too. So the Navy didn't like the idea of high buildings going all the way up the slope. One of the big issues with the Navy is to make sure that we kept low profile and we didn't get too high up on the hill slope.
Yeah.
So we've gone into the hill to create a development pad for 2 building sites.
Yeah, I think if you, if you had a different kind of floor plate of buildings so that they'd be split slower in the front and higher in the back, then the highest building in the back would still be the exact same height. It's just that the front buildings could have been lower and you could have excavated less, because you're sitting on top of 10 feet of fill in front to achieve this.
It is, but if you look at the slope, I think he said it started like 30 down by the road and we're up to, what is it, 130,
140 of the way
Yeah,
back.
I saw.
way back. After you get, if you can see the topo still here, you get back to this part right here and it's mountain goat territory. So
I know.
stepping up, yeah, to some extent, but you will start doing a development like that and this becomes a much harder and more expensive building to do.
I just thought you'd step down, not step up.
Yeah. I mean,
So I think that the premise was you had this kind of building that doesn't lend itself to splitting.
you're correct, and it does require that excavation into that gravel and
Right.
that rock there. So I've worked on this site with, I don't know how many different developers. I've brought the plans almost to this board on multiple occasions for other developers, and then finally Josh, who's the owner, turned to me and said, hey, can you represent me? I'm gonna go and get it approved myself. This has been looked at by engineers for the last, the better part of the last 10 years, and ultimately, this is the design that actually works.
Yeah.
It's something very similar to it.
I'll go with, this is the design that someone wants to build, so I'm thumbs up on that part. So,
I won't argue with that.
yeah, that's what we got, but a little disappointed, but that's what we got. I just want to make sure that the Navy, you said they didn't want it to be too high, but that they realized that the front building was going to be up. I mean, it's not a 30-foot building, it's a 45-foot building because you built up 15 feet
Yeah.
of dirt on top of
What
that.
they basically said to us is, we'd like you not to go all the way up the hill, and we don't want you. I had another developer who was looking at this site 3 or 4 years ago, who was actually gonna seek a use variance, a height variance for the zone because of the rock
We'll see
being,
what-
and he wanted to get higher and put everything in one building. And the Navy said, no, stay at the 30 feet, make it develop a level development pad and keep your development down here, sort of the northwest corner.
Okay.
So I have these things. I think Commissioner Kane asked us to look at a loading space for the storage
Yeah,
building.
it seems like.
See if we can improve that. I have Commissioner Hudisek asked for a little bit more detail on the face of the modular brick wall so that we get something that looks attractive, because it's going to be sort of a centerpiece as you drive by
Oh, yeah.
or you bike by on the bike path. And then Vice Chair Zod, please investigate the connection of building 1 to the eastern EV parking field, making sure that there's a more convenient and usable pedestrian connection.
They'll actually use, yeah.
Happy to look at those. We're gonna be doing the traffic analysis for you, so we'll try to address those 3 things plus the traffic analysis for your next meeting.
And then if we could just have more clearly where those EV, I'd like to see those blocks.
and correct them.
Make
Yeah.
it all consistent so we can, and then we can look at it and.
Can we make a requirement to say EV, in the parking space?
Like a decal?
No, but I meant.
Oh, yeah. No, I was gonna
Just
suggest
a-
I can get with Joe and we
Yeah.
can make. the-
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
We'll use something that's easier to see.
It was gonna be a tech item anyway.
Good, so. Is there anything else you'd want us to?
Well, I just one little thing, the landscaping plan, actually, I think it's as good as you can do. But I'm back to, there's so much of that retaining wall. Is that, just wonder if we could get something, especially since it's just block, is it dry block we're talking about? Is it going to be mortared to just be inserted dry block?
Modular concrete block.
But they fit into each other,
Yeah.
that's right. So with that the case, can we get something growing on it? So it's not quite so much just concrete or going over it? Right now, you've got.
That's the concept.
Yeah, I know. So it's just, and actually the second tier, the shrubs that you've got on there will cover up that second tier pretty well over
Yeah.
time. Those are great, but the first tier, not so much.
Let us show you what the modular wall surface is gonna be.
Okay,
We can pick out a spec one for you and give you something you can actually look at rather than, there's artistic.
something, just a license on this.
Liberty.
Yeah, exactly.
Bill, can I also hit on,
Understanding is that I mean, you went to all the trouble of doing the false mansard. Oh, I did have a question about, you were talking about, here's what the air conditioning units look like from different things.
You don't see them from anywhere.
From anywhere? Is it, are they
You'd have to
actually
be-
below the? I just wondered if you were over at the commissary, would you see them? No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't show in your elevations, but they never seem to.
We actually have, this is where the units are actually, the roof, so you think of the roof as like a giant well. It's
Yeah.
sort of.
Is
so
a
you have- we have
parapet,
the-
that's a,
Mhm.
that, is there a parapet or, yeah?
Yeah, they
okay.
do show up in the elevation. The only thing that'll show is the elevator.
The elevator?
You can see, you can see them.
Okay,
Pops up without-
and that's fine, but,
No,
oh, okay, and everything else,
that's in the middle of the building.
all right, and I wasn't really
You're
concerned about
down, even
Yeah,
It's
no,
sitting in
no.
a car looking up.
Yeah,
Standing.
that. And as it turns out, the fields are actually down low because that actually is Crystal Lake. But just want to make sure, because we want to be consistent of having the parapet be about the height of the finished air conditioning units. They have a tendency to grow. But I like, it looks like you're, what is in fact the parapet height?
2.6.
Oh, so it isn't that high. All right.
And if I can hit on, so the idea of adding landscaping at that bottom retaining wall,
Yeah.
Public Works asked for some drainage measures to be taken before you hit the multi-use path. So I don't know the feasibility of doing something like that. Joe, I think you've got
Yeah.
a detail showing that based on what Public Works asked for, if you want to see that.
That's that berm.
Mhm. Because their concern was obviously water coming down, going into the multi-use path and.
So one of the comments from, right, utilities?
Public Works.
Public Works, was the watershed coming off the front of the building, the walls and the area in between. They were, the suggestion for berms was just something to capture that water before it goes into the bike path. Really minimal amount of water.
I saw there was a swale.
What we came up with was a swale
Mhm.
that creates a high point and then flows down to the drainage structures. We proposed some Nioplast yard drains to capture that water before it.
You know, I saw that. Now, the kind of thing I'm thinking, because it's very well landscaped. It's a heavy landscape. But if there's a lot of wall, then what would normally be happening there is there would be something growing on the wall. That's kind of a normal thing that would happen there. And I'm just saying, since it's dry block, it won't hurt that. Normally it eats away at the mortar and whatnot. There's no mortar, so it's,
Let's say that, well, I'll.
Look at
work
that,
with, Tim McGee and Chad, Frost, and we'll see if we can address that as part of the response to you at the next.
and that would certainly soften the look of just split face concrete block.
Yeah, and again, and I think we want to give you a sample of what that wall is really gonna look like too, which may alleviate some concerns as well.
Yeah.
So again, clarify the EV space locations, look, explore a more defined loading space for the storage building, detail on the modular block place surface along the front of the property, investigate possibility of additional plantings along that wall, and then also the connection of building 1 to the EV parking field to the east.
Along or on that wall.
Or on.
And do you want me to hit on any of the notes I had for the site plan?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. You
Yeah.
guys had your questions ready to go.
Yeah.
So Josh is here. So if you had questions around that grading process, he was going to be available to answer them.
Yeah.
I understand. And if you were able to look at that perspective, to see just the scale at the wetland stage, the agency wanted to see that scale.
Mhm.
Didn't know if the PCC would be or share those concerns of seeing that and understanding what that process would look like. Talked about the phasing. So we will require a geotech report prior to that site work commencing. A lot of those slopes are called out to be engineered slopes because of that the sheer slope, right? 1:1 in some instances, which triggered that on the southern side, that reverse bench, right? That they're actually planting into to kind of decrease, I think, the visibility of that sheer slope, right? And then site prep, as of our last conversation, was expected to last for a year. Again, a lot of the concern that staff has had is just ensuring that with the amount of site prep, right, that it didn't turn into, a really full-fledged excavation gravel operation, right? And related to that, the Navy is aware of the scale of the work that needs to be done and blasting and all that as well. But you'll see, if you took a look at any of the motions, you'll see that that theme's kind of hit on throughout.
The Navy, I take it, wanted them to coordinate with blasting since their
Yep.
their fuel pods are there.
Yep.
All right. So we're not going to vote on this, so we just move on. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Do you have any new applications?
No,
Ooh.
No.
No referrals, I believe.
Thank you.
Report of chair. We already lost Jeff, so I don't get to say anything. Who's gonna get all excited about that? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Report of commission, anybody?
I guess
Yeah.
a continuing thing that we come up with traffic studies is that, you know, they give us a level of service, A, B, C, D, E, I guess it goes to F.
Mhm.
But we have no criteria for rejecting something. So, I mean, it's kind of pointless. We can say we don't like it, but we have no criteria.
so in some cases, we will hire a third-party consultant. Okay, and we've done that on a number of applications. We didn't here, you know, maybe we should have. But that's the recourse, because Bill's right. I mean, if you have an expert who is stating his opinion and this is, you know, what he says he believes is true, you have to accept that unless you all are
Yeah,
experts in it.
Right.
Remember that from the Walmart application, it was
Right.
Jim Sherrard who said, I hear engineers on this side saying this, and I have engineers on this side saying the other
And
thing.
you can choose if you.
So that's what he said. He
That's
said, I'm
fine.
gonna pick the one that's
That's
most
right.
conservative. Well, if you don't have that engineer on the other side, then
Exactly.
you have nothing to base
Exactly.
anything, any
Exactly.
objection.
But I mean, we have nothing in our regulation that says if we're going from a service A to a service F. And we think it's a bad idea to do that, and we have some guy that says it's F.
It's all,
I
it'll
mean,
be
it's an
okay.
existing condition. Right now, he's telling us at one of the intersections.
Right, but I mean, think about, I mean, the level of service really is only with regards to the traffic. You're not looking at pedestrian access. There's a number of other things that you can take into account and make changes, especially with a special. Especially, and again, it comes to pressing them, right? Just like you did tonight.
That was a kind of unique situation because the level of service is going to, here's how much traffic there is, and here's how much you stop at the traffic lights.
Right,
Okay,
and it was-
that wasn't the issue.
Exactly, that's
Right.
exactly right.
Then thank goodness you had the numbers there because I didn't even catch that. They had the wrong numbers.
They look
Yeah,
like they-
and going in the wrong direction.
Wrong direction.
Yeah,
and-
I also-
and way off.
Just to be honest, and you know, this came out enough, but I thought that there would be a, you know, a modifier because 90% of the people are going that way, you know? You
And-
can't use a standard multi.
Okay, and keep in mind, the hearing is still open, so,
Oh,
and there's no one here to.
oh,
listen to
okay.
this discussion,
So we
so let's-
shouldn't be discussing. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And report of staff.
So the only thing I have is I've had some contact with the Mouse Island residents. And I think at the next meeting, they will have a proposed text to talk to you about with regards to short-term rentals. Some conditions. So, yeah.
It's funny, I was on little cruise this afternoon with Project O. They did a lighthouse tour on the boat and we went by Mouse Island. I'd never seen it from the water like that before. It's quite beautiful. You know, the buildings out there are quite well kept up. I kind of, from the things that we saw, you know, you just see the little
Yeah,
thing.
I've seen it out there. It's
Anyway. Aside.
looks ideal. Probably not so much lived there, but it's. Okay, we got the ASP report, which I didn't look at. Anybody have questions on it? Application update? Nada, so move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Ooh.
Well, done, Bangor. Very good.
Don't need to be